Good morning, it's 6 o'clock. On today's show, tear gas, rubber bullets and burning vehicles in downtown Los Angeles in a third day of unrest over immigration raids.
Plus, a huge week ahead for the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, with the Home Office still holding out for more money in Wednesday's spending review.
It's Monday, the 9th of June, coming your way. Police in Los Angeles say they're overwhelmed by violence as protests intensify.
In downtown Los Angeles, police have arrested at least 10 people today as protests against Donald Trump's immigration crackdown turned violent.
Also ahead, Israeli troops board an aid ship carrying Greta Thunberg and other activists to Gaza. More than 1,000 doctors write to MPs urging them to vote against the assisted dying bill. Sky News reveals how AI tells lies and invents things as the Prime Minister heads to London Tech Week. And in sport, Carlos Alcaraz fights back to win the French Open after more than 5 hours on court. Good morning, everyone. Great to have you with us this Monday. There's been a third night of chaos in Los Angeles. Police fired tear gas and rubber bullets into crowds protesting over immigration raids. US President Donald Trump has deployed the National Guard, who are positioned at points across the city, and hundreds of Marines are on standby. Well, let's go live now to our US correspondent, Martha Kellner, who is in Los Angeles for the breakfast show this morning. And Martha, give us a sense of the mood on the ground right now.
Well, it's much quieter here, certainly, than it was just a few hours ago. Most of the protesters seem to have heeded police warnings to leave this area or face arrest. But the streets in this part of downtown LA bear the hallmarks of a day of messy, ugly and at times violent protests. Lots of the streets here strewn with debris, water bottles, cans, rubber bullets too, which police, law enforcement had been firing at protesters. Many of the buildings too now are graffitied with anti-Donald Trump, anti-immigration, anti-law enforcement slogans. It has been an ugly day across this part of Los Angeles. Have a look. In the heart of LA's downtown, cars on fire and tensions inflamed. Emotions stoked by the president's decision to deploy the military here. The Mexican flag is flying and anger directed at ICE, the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement Agency, after a series of raids.
This is where Donald Trump's immigration policies have ended up, almost 5 months into his presidency. Pandemonium and lawlessness on the streets of one of America's biggest cities.
The protests are now in their third day, initially sparked by raids on workplaces across LA, a search to round up illegal immigrants. President Trump said he deployed the National Guard because the demonstrations here were out of control, but the protests had been mainly peaceful before. And now this.
Projectiles are being thrown at the police officers, and in turn, they're deploying these rubber bullets and tear gas. The California Governor, Gavin Newsom, says that this chaos is exactly what President Trump wants.
Newsom argued the president had breached state sovereignty by ordering the National Guard here against his wishes. Trump described LA as an invaded and occupied city. Politicians on both sides of the aisle condemning the violence. This woman, one of a number arrested.
Why are you here today? Because a lot of my people are getting taken away. We've lived here all our lives, and it's like, how are you gonna send us back to a place where we don't even know? You told us to come here for opportunity, we came, and it's like, I don't know, what do we do from here?
They shot me in the leg with a rubber bullet. They hit me in the head. If you can see under my hair, there's bruising.
This is the most significant pushback yet against Donald Trump's immigration policy. One of the key arteries of this city, the main road in downtown Los Angeles, completely closed. as police encircle protesters. The president said that any violence which impeded officials would be treated as a form of rebellion. More protests are planned through tonight and into tomorrow. The White House crackdown on immigration has definitely been divisive. The fight back here clearly bringing some together. There are still pockets of scattered protests across downtown Los Angeles, but it's certainly a lot more peaceful than it was this afternoon and into the early evening hours. And in fact, the main highway, the 101 freeway, which you saw in my report, which was closed for much of the day with a standoff between police officers and protesters. One side of that freeway is now back open again, although the ramp on the other side is still being blocked by police officers. But it feels a lot more calm here. Just to reflect on Donald Trump's immigration policies, they actually have received net positive approval ratings across the board in polls taken before these protests. It's not clear if that will change in light of the violent scenes that we've seen in downtown LA today and yesterday. But certainly you'd have to imagine that President Trump is relishing a head-to-head with a blue state over one of the key pillars of his presidency. He's cracked down on illegal immigration.
OK, Martha, for now, thank you. Stay safe to you and the team too. There's more news on this on the Sky News website and app too. Next, Israel has prevented an aid ship carrying Greta Thunberg and other activists from reaching Gaza. Well, the Freedom Flotilla Coalition had organised the voyage to try to break the naval blockage of Gaza. They say the ship was carrying baby formula, food and medical supplies. Well, Israel's foreign ministry called it a selfie yacht and sent troops in to intercept it. Well, Israel released pictures of what appeared to be military personnel handing out food and water to passengers who were wearing safety jackets.
My name is Greta Thunberg and I am from Sweden. If you see this video, we have been intercepted and kidnapped in international waters by the Israeli occupational forces or forces that support Israel. I urge all my friends, family and comrades to put pressure on the Swedish government to release me and the others as soon as possible.
Now, we do have a statement from the Israeli Foreign Ministry. Let me read it out for you. The selfie yacht of the celebrities is safely making its way to the shores of Israel. The passengers are expected to return to their home countries. It goes on to say, while Greta and others attempted to stage a media provocation whose sole purpose was to gain publicity and which included less than a single truckload of aid, more than 1,200 aid trucks have entered Gaza from Israel within the past 2 weeks. Goes on to say, in addition, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has distributed close to 11 million meals directly to civilians in Gaza. There are ways to deliver aid to the Gaza Strip, and they do not involve Instagram selfies. The tiny amount of aid that was on the yacht and not consumed by the celebrities will be transferred to Gaza through real humanitarian channels. OK, you're up to date on that story there, then. Now, more than 1,000 doctors have written to MPs urging them to vote against the assisted dying bill. In a letter seen exclusively by Sky News, they said the matter poses a real threat to both patients and the medical workforce. Well, the bill would give terminally ill adults with only 6 months left to live the chance to apply for assistance to end their lives. And they would need approval from 2 doctors and an expert panel too. MPs have already approved a change to the bill which would ensure that doctors wouldn't be obliged to take part in assisted dying.
So this is the single most important piece of healthcare legislation in 50 or 60 years, and it will have very profound consequences for the future. And many doctors are really concerned that members of Parliament are not hearing the views of the medical profession. I would add that lots of doctors remain neutral or may support the principle of assisted dying, but are very, very concerned about this particular bill. We don't think it's a bill that is safe, that protects patients, protects families and protects the medical workforce.
And we'll be speaking to Professor Rees, who has co-authored the letter, at about 8 o'clock this morning. Do stay with us for this. We'll also be joined by our health correspondent, Ashish Joshi, who has more on this story and a bit of an exclusive to reveal here on Sky News Breakfast this Monday. Do stay with us, so much more to come. But let's take you through today's top stories as you're waking up this morning. And nurses will start voting on the government's 3.6% pay deal today. Around 345,000 Royal College of Nursing members in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will be asked if that's enough. It'll be a simple question, and they must decide then if it's not, and that could take us closer to more strike action. We'll keep you up to date on that story, on the pulse with that. Elsewhere, the NHS has issued an urgent call for blood donors with stocks dangerously low. This is following a cyber attack. You may remember this. It happened last year and it crippled its supply. Well, the Health Service says there's a critical need for black donors and for those with O-negative blood, which is used in emergencies. A man has been detained after escaping on the taxiway at Heathrow Airport. It happened at around 8:30 last night with Big Jet TV capturing the incident. There he is. You can see it blurred out there at the bottom of the screen. Heathrow says the individual has been removed from the airport. And for the first time, the Brit Awards are going to be held outside of London. It's about time, I say. The biggest night in British music will be held in Manchester next year, with organisers saying the switch will invigorate the show. Definitely think that's needed. OK, we're going to talk about politics now. Rachel Reeves will set out the government's spending plans in her review. It happens in a couple of days on Wednesday, with the Health and Defence Departments expected to be among some of the few winners. So there's winners. How about the losers? Mari's here to discuss this a bit more. So we know defence, that's sort of ring-fenced, it's OK. What about the others? Who's losing out here, do you think?
Well, we're waiting to find out, but there appears to be some tension between the Treasury and the Home Office. So Sky News understands that Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary of State, has finally come to an agreement and settled on her budget with
up to
the Treasury.
All of these decisions.
Totally down to the wire.
Like, we're still going on last night, potentially?
Exactly that.
How?
And so it appears that Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, is the only one yet to settle. There appears to be some tension around police funding, around local councils and those kinds of things. And it's really difficult because if we just zoom out for a second and look at the background on this. So let's not forget, Keir Starmer's been Prime Minister for almost a year now. He's made some quite difficult and unpopular decisions in the first year of his premiership. Winter fuel is a perfect example of that, where he's ended up U-turning on the policy. And really, the decisions that are set out on Wednesday are going to set the tone for this Parliament. They are really going to be a great indication of the government's priorities for the nation. And as you were saying, winners and losers, that really translates into who matters most, what matters most. Of course, the old phrase that everyone likes to bring out at these times of the year, you know, to govern is to choose, and therefore there's always going to have to be something and some level of a trade-off. But I think what's interesting is it is a really important opportunity for the Prime Minister to refocus his efforts on delivery, on what he wants to deliver domestically. There's been so much foreign policy, diplomacy, and kind of being buffeted by international events at recently times, that I think it's really important for the Prime Minister now to show his domestic focus once again and re-honing in on that. The pressure on how it's received is not just here in Westminster by his own backbenchers, by his own party, but by voters, all importantly. And really, this is now setting out, laying out the battlegrounds for the next general election. It might sound dramatic, but these are 3-year spending plans. So essentially, by the time those plans come to an end, you're going to then be in election mode for the next general election. So these decisions that are announced on Wednesday will lay that battleground, and also they are the decisions that the government will therefore be defending and arguing against or for in a general election.
Yeah, a huge, huge couple of days for the government. Mari, as always, brilliant stuff. Thank you so much. We're going to move on now because senior US and Chinese officials are meeting in London for trade negotiations. The meeting comes after a phone call between President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping. This was on Thursday, and the US president described it as very positive. Let's get more now with our Asia correspondent, Helen Ann Smith. Great to see you, Helen Ann. How's this all being framed, do you think?
Well, I think it's being framed by the international community as an opportunity for these two superpowers to draw back from the brink, if you like. What started as a very, very serious trade war between the two world's two biggest economies has really been spiraling to something of a supply chain war in recent weeks. And the chance of it doing serious, deep economic damage to both countries, really, is really expanding. And I think both of them want to avoid that. As you said, a call between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump on Thursday, really paving the way for these meetings to go ahead. And it's important that call happened, really, because relations between the two have really been souring in the last couple of weeks, in particular over some of the details of their previous talks. Let me just take you back a bit and remind you what's happened, because it is complicated. It all kicked off in April with this huge tit-for-tat trade war between the two that Donald Trump instigated initially. It essentially ended up with tariffs well in excess of 100% on goods coming from either country, going both ways, essentially sort of making all trade impossible between the two. They were then able to just about draw back from that following some talks in Geneva that happened last month, where they agreed to bring those tariffs down, to control, to move away from some of those export controls. But that's been falling apart in recent weeks because on both sides, new measures being introduced, some foot dragging accusations that other things have been going on that continue to hurt each other. Most particularly, the US has put more restrictions on some semiconductor manufacturing technology. That really hurts the Chinese. But most importantly, the Chinese have been really dragging their feet and putting extra restrictions on rare earth mineral exports. Now, that really matters because that is the crucial ingredient that goes into high-tech manufacturing, such as automotive and robotics, some weaponry as well. And some American automotive manufacturers have said if the flow doesn't start again from China, remember China has the majority of these rare earth minerals, then actually the manufacture of some cars is going to have to cease pretty imminently. So it's a serious, serious situation. And that will be one of the key points of discussion today. There could also, of course, there be other things on the table, questions over Taiwan, questions over the US having threatened to revoke Chinese student visas, a whole host of issues on which these two seriously disagree. But I think there is a little bit of tentative optimism. Nobody expected big breakthroughs in Geneva last month, and we saw big breakthroughs. So some people hopeful. But look, remember, these two leaders of these two great superpowers, neither wants to be seen to be backing down. Both will want to be seen to be winning. Both will go into these negotiations. Both will send their teams into these negotiations, drawing very hard lines indeed.
Helen Ann, thank you so much for that analysis. Really appreciate it. OK, let's take a look at today's weather.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
It looks as though high pressure will return to settle the weather for the last half of June. For now, it remains unsettled with showers or longer spells of rain, and these will turn thundery as warmer air spreads up from the south later this week. It'll be a dry, bright start to the day for early risers like you and me, but the cloud will increase from the west and will bubble up elsewhere, allowing showers to break out. Southernmost counties will stay mostly dry, with some really good sunny spells, and more persistent rain will reach Northern Ireland and Scotland through the morning.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
Still to come on The Breakfast Show. We're heading for a short break. When we return, though, the aid yacht aiming to break the naval blockade of Gaza is intercepted by Israel. We'll have more on that. Also, Starmer wants to put AI at the heart of plans to boost the economy. But how trustworthy it really is it?
show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right, i.e. fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Now we're seeing a north-south divide developing over the next few days. Today, southern areas will be largely dry with temperatures trending upwards, really. The north will be more unsettled with early showers giving way to heavier and more persistent rain. Now, the wet weather will help dampen down the pollen in the early days of the grass pollen season. Further south, the season is more progressed to moderate counts and expected for northern England and Wales. Pollen levels, though, will be high in the sunnier south with very high counts across East Anglia.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
The Israeli Foreign Ministry has confirmed that an aid ship is making its way to the shores of Israel instead of its intended destination of Gaza. Now, the vessel had been carrying a dozen activists, including Greta Thunberg, who were seeking to break that naval blockade of Gaza. Well, let's speak now to Chief Executive of the charity SKT Welfare, Asif Hussain. Great to see you, as always, on The Breakfast Show. So what have you made, Asif, of what we've been seeing in the seas around Gaza?
So this morning, I've seen some videos, the last images that were broadcast from the ship itself, where the Israeli commanders have boarded the ship itself and were, as I'd ordered all the 12 activists to throw their mobile phones into the sea. So since then, communication has been lost. We're unaware of what's going on. But one of the MEPs had sent out a message prior to that saying that we're most likely going to be boarded and taken to the port of Ashdod, so that we believe that the ship will be escorted to the port of Ashdod, where I think all the activists will be arrested. This ship, this flotilla, is more than just more than just aid, but it's more of symbolism with and standing with the Palestinians. I think these 12 protesters have done something more than maybe any government has done, and they've actually stood and actually physically gone there, placed their lives in danger, and then actually tried to do something and tried to break this drastic blockade where, you know, millions of people, 2 million people plus, are dying of starvation. They've actually done something more than I guess all of us have done.
Yeah. Asif, did you think it was a good idea? Because some people say, like you say, it was symbolic efforts, and whether they actually translate to real change on the ground and the suffering of people that you talk about.
We all knew it was never going to get to Gaza. It was all about symbolism. And I think that's important right now. When people are having to queue up, desperate people, starving, you know, children, the elderly, women are having to queue up and being shot at. And so many, we've seen over 100 people being killed in food queues. We've never seen that before in Gaza. When UNRWA were there, they were there distributing the food aid. They understood how to do this. They understood the local demographics, but they also understood the population. They knew where food had to go. We haven't seen this before. I don't think that we've seen this anywhere in history where, you know, a few food parcels are let in, and again, a sign of symbolism that we're trying to do something when really it's not. People are starving. What's really needed is that we need to focus more attention on this. And this is what the ship and the flotilla Freedom Flotilla was trying to do with Greta there. I think it was important to show that we care and we are trying to do something, and to show to the desperate people of Gaza, you know, women and children. Over 20,000 children, unfortunately, have lost their lives. On the ship, we had prosthetic limbs for children, which are not allowed in. No food aid, no medical aid is allowed into Gaza, and hasn't been for over 3 months now. What we've seen from the pictures is maybe a few thousand food parcels a day, with millions of people trying to get access to them. The food aid isn't enough, and so this was needed. They knew the risks. They understood that their lives potentially could be at risk, but they've made it clear. They've broadcasted their location, which people can follow online. They broadcasted videos and pictures, so it was very, very clear what they were doing, where they were, what their location was, to make sure that they don't actually put themselves in harm's way. So the Israelis are aware that this is being broadcast all over. And the symbolism does matter. We've got to show that we stand with the people of Gaza in this time of need.
Just lastly, just to wrap, were you broadly in support then of what Greta and the other activists were doing?
Yes, as an organisation, we support. There were humanitarians that were there, not with arms, like I said, with prosthetic limbs, with food aid, although not a lot, but still the symbolism does matter. And there were people on the shores of Gaza waiting. Palestinians were waiting to welcome the ship to see if it actually got through. And what we're doing now, and I think they've achieved their objective largely, is to keep our focus on Gaza, to put pressure on our governments, not just Israeli governments, but our governments who are, I'm sad to say, have been paying lip service to this for many, many years, but not really taking any action. So it's important, and we're talking about it today, and that matters, and that's important to show the people of Gaza that we are with them.
OK, really great to get your take on this story. Asif Hussain, CEO of SKT Welfare. Still to come on The Breakfast Show. Should we be concerned about AI being untruthful? I really love this story. We'll speak to a tech journalist next. And then in the sport, now Spain's Carlos Alcaraz claimed one of the all-time great Grand Slam finals at the French Open.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war.
This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Welcome back to Sky News Breakfast. A quick recap of our top stories this Monday. It's been a tense few hours in Los Angeles with protests and clashes on the streets for a third day. Tear gas and rubber bullets have been used against those demonstrating. They're angry about immigration raids, and President Donald Trump has sent in the National Guard. We'll have more on this story throughout the day on Breakfast. Elsewhere, the Israeli Foreign Ministry has confirmed that aid ship the Madeleine is making its way to the shores of Israel. The vessel had been carrying a dozen activists, including Greta Thunberg, who's seeking to break the naval blockade of Gaza. Back here, the Prime Minister is set to announce he's putting AI at the centre of his plan to boost the country's economy, but research suggests some models are causing more errors than ever before. And more than 1,000 doctors have written to MPs urging them to vote against the assisted dying bill, calling it a real threat to both patients and the medical workforce. The NHS is calling for 1 million people to come forward to boost supplies of blood. The Health Service says there's a critical need for black donors and for those with O-negative blood, which is used in emergencies. Well, the Prime Minister is set to announce he's putting AI at the heart of his plans to boost the economy. New research reveals that the most recent updates to some AI models are causing more errors than ever before, something our deputy political editor experienced. Sam Coates was left rather perplexed when he had an incident with ChatGPT, and in his words, he felt gaslit. Sam has turned to ChatGPT again to explain whether things are getting worse.
Artificial intelligence, AI, the future of work, life, and we are to be told this week, government, helping the state work better and cheaper. But this comes only days after Sky News revealed how AI can fabricate, lie, then doubles down.
This is meant to be what I just recorded, but it had made it all up. I mean, at this point, ChatGPT is gaslighting me. No such thing exists. It's all complete fake. And finally, AI confesses. Look at this.
Oh, wow. Since we revealed on Friday that AI invented an episode of our Politics at Sam and Anne's podcast, I've been flooded with other examples of AI hallucinations, which feel like lies. Here's a former business secretary who oversaw AI policy with this.
When I queried it, it admitted that it was wrong and gave me an answer that was completely different.
He's also a former select committee chair who investigated AI last year.
When I chaired the Science and Technology Select Committee, hallucination was one of the problems, but it was expected to diminish over time. But what we seem to have discovered, and when I say, Sam, your exchange with ChatGPT, it seems to admit that actually they're certainly not fading away and might even be getting worse.
But is it? We decided to ask ChatGPT itself using its conversation mode to find out more.
I'm just your friendly AI assistant, here to help you out with anything you need.
Now, research by ChatGPT's parent company suggests new models released in recent months have more hallucinations, as much as 48% of the time in some cases. But does it think it's lying more or less?
Yeah, the concept of AI hallucinations is definitely something that's been talked about, and it's still a challenge. The technology is always improving, and newer versions tend to do a better job at staying accurate.
See there, it's saying things are getting better, but the data suggests the opposite, so I press it.
Hang on. Can you give me the specific stats from the most recent OpenAI study into the newest models of ChatGPT's hallucination rate?
So according to recent internal tests from OpenAI, the newer models have shown higher hallucination rates. For instance, the model known as O3 had about a 33% hallucination rate, while the O4 mini model had around 48%.
A moment ago, you told me it was getting better. Now you're telling me you're confessing it's getting worse. This isn't a great look.
I get where you're coming from, and I'm sorry for the mixed messages. The performance of these models can vary.
It's London Tech Week, fronted by a Prime Minister who hopes AI has answers for his government too. But are we all too trusting? Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, let's speak to tech journalist Will Guyatt now. And I know you were smiling during that package from our Sam Coates, but there is a serious question here, isn't there? Is ChatGPT and AI getting dumber, and should we be worried about it?
Yes and yes, and I was laughing because the concept of a fine Sky news expert interviewing what is essentially something pretending to be sentient and intelligent and does a good job at it at the moment, what was good. We are finding a situation here where we've become far too reliant on this technology and the companies are pushing it far too quickly. There's loads of stuff that AI is really, really, really good for. But going to it and researching your daily life, replacing your news, Google are using what they're calling AI overviews to replace their search terms and search results, which stops websites with actual facts being shown, is quite nerve-wracking. And we're seeing a huge number of these hallucinations. Just this weekend, the TV presenter and personality Jeremy Vine had to come out and say he didn't have Parkinson's, which is what one of the chatbots is now saying. Just last week, I was introduced to an event having studied at Nottingham Trent University. I've never even stepped into Nottingham in my life, but that came from a chatbot too. And it's all too easy for these little bits of fake information, these nuggets to be added. But what Sam has seen is with the latest models of these chatbots, it just seems that lying is easier for them. They're taking the easy route to information, and that's the worrying and troubling thing. They shouldn't be being used.
This is really interesting because I also wonder, added to what you're saying there, Will, is the hype dying around AI, do you think? Or is it just experiencing glitches with so many people using it?
I think it's not because of everybody using it. I think the companies are rushing too quickly to try and bring new features to market. They're making huge changes to try and make each inquiry use much less energy.
Pains, then.
Yeah, growing pains is a good answer, but we shouldn't be seeing this in real time. It shouldn't be being pushed out to us at the same moment. In a society where we're battling with fake news and we don't know what to see, the idea that Google is now willfully sharing false summaries via its service and at the bottom saying this is in beta so it might get it wrong, that's not really a disclaimer. We had Apple pulling one of their news pilots in AI a month or so ago because it was incorrectly announcing that people were dying, giving people wrong results to sports games, all sorts of stuff. So we're in a situation where there is a lot of good you can do with the technology, but there's also a lot of bad. For example, I have used the AI transcript tool that Sam is suggesting, and I was gleefully telling colleagues it was saving me hours on an interview. Now I'm slightly concerned that there's going to be answers in there for questions I've not even asked. And that's the reality of this technology at the moment. The more of this damaging information that comes out, the more we have to look and not completely pause the use of AI, but the companies need to slap much clearer disclaimers on this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and just briefly then, do you think you'll continue to trust it with your job?
I use it all the time. I now have a cloned AI voice version of myself. This is the real me this morning. I can prove that. But for some podcasts and interviews, I have managed to use an AI version of me, including with presenters on LBC who I've known for 15 years and couldn't tell the difference between me and the AI voice. So the technology is working. It's progressing quickly. But don't ask it to mark your homework for you or check your facts at the moment, because that's not something it's good at.
Gotcha. Will, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We're going to talk about this story with Sam Coates a bit later on in Breakfast. Will, great to get your take. Now we're going to change tone and tact at the moment. Sky News investigation has found that some adult websites may be advertising content linked to organised sexual exploitation, raising serious questions about online regulations. Our correspondent Matthew Thompson has this report, and just a warning, it contains descriptions of sexual exploitations and abuse, including rape.
I'd uploaded a CV on there and I'd got a message quite quickly.
When Sarah, not her real name, arrived in Britain, like so many young people, she had high hopes, dreams of a new life. One that began with what she thought was an interview for a waitressing job.
The man was there to greet me, and one of the very first things he did was ask me to hand over my passport to check that I had the right to work. I remember him taking me into another room within his flat and closing the door behind him and then locking the door, and then I was raped.
Sarah became one of a tragic majority of sex-trafficked women, 75% of whom are advertised online. Her passport confiscated, scanned and uploaded by her abuser to an adult service website. She didn't know it, but her identity had been stolen. A profile created, and she became one of many in a network of abused women forced to have sex with men across the capital.
He would say, like, this man, you know, would like to see you. He's booked you. Okay. I'm going to rape you again, and you'll take that to that man. Things like that.
Escorting websites are fertile ground for sexual exploitation. Pimps and traffickers camouflage the abuse of their victims amongst legitimate adverts. Over the course of several months, Sky News investigated 50,000 adverts on two of the UK's biggest escorting websites, Adult Work and Viva Street. We looked for ads that showed signs of suspicious activity, as defined by the Sex Trafficking Indication Matrix. One key giveaway, according to that matrix, is the same phone number being used more than once. On Viva Street, we found 7,000 ads which had phone numbers that appeared elsewhere, more than half of the ads on the website at the time. Some of these may be legitimate duplicates, but for the most high-risk adverts we identified, the profiles had the same number with different photos, ages and locations. To take just one example, one number was used 8 times for ads for at least 5 different women. All had the same age listed, the descriptions were very similar, though names had been changed, and they all had different photos, and a geographical spread across Scotland, the East Midlands, the North East and South East of England. Another sign is the advert description. Is it clearly copied and pasted? On Adult Work, there were over 1,000 duplicated descriptions amongst adverts live on the website. These red flags are by themselves not definitive proof of illegality, but together they create an impression of an environment where abuse can thrive.
I think there are big questions for national policing to answer about why it is that this important investigation has had to be done by Sky News and why it wasn't national policing that were launching an investigation to uncover the scale of potential criminality on pimping websites.
Viva Street say there can be innocent explanations, including sex workers posting adverts in different areas. They told us many sex workers use different names and personas, and touring, moving for short periods of time to different areas to take bookings. They also said, we take safety extremely seriously and deploy industry-leading security measures to detect, report and remove potentially exploitative content. Adult Work say sexual exploitation is not tolerated on their site. They said, we have strict internal policies in place to reinforce this and make it a priority to fully cooperate and comply with all law enforcement requests. That these sites cater to legitimate sex work isn't in dispute. The question is whether, by their very design, they're open to unacceptable risks of exploitation, and whether the answer is better regulation, better policing, or banning them from existing at all. Matthew Thompson, Sky News.
Well, Jack is here in the studio this Monday, which is a great treat for me because you've got all the sport.
It's very weird for me, let me tell you. Normally I'm still asleep at this point. Yesterday, my goodness, I actually went to Queen's to cover tennis yesterday. But when I came back, I kind of went straight into the middle of the most incredible tennis match I think I've ever seen. They're calling it the best French Open ever between Carlos Alcaraz and
5 hours, Jackie.
5 hours, 29 minutes, the longest ever as well. And it was just incredible. The two of them must have been so exhausted, and yet the tennis just kept getting better and better and better. It was out of this world, like sent from the gods. I mean, if you've not seen it, watch it back. It is amazing. And the great news is they're very young, and this is going to happen over and over again. But let's have a look at what happened yesterday.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
How do you manage to keep your spirits up and the spirits of your teammates after challenges you may face?
Self-confidence in yourself and your own ability is such an important aspect to have.
I've had a number of injuries the last 1.5 or 2 years, and they're taking their toll on my head at times.
Sometimes you just need to grab somebody and just give them a hug, tell them that it'll be okay.
Professional footballers helping young people with their mental health. That's the aim of virtual soccer schools, alongside learning platform Amazing People Schools. Online, in person, and with AI technology.
My question is, how do you deal with stress on and off the pitch?
Football is the most powerful sport in the world, and utilising footballers, we just see them as players on the pitch, passing the ball and scoring goals, but they have so much more to offer. So at VSS, we're providing them with a platform to showcase their mental health strategies, their setbacks, how they deal with anxiety, pressure and growth mindset, just not on the pitch, but how they utilise it off the pitch as well.
Former Arsenal defender Thomas Vermaelen was the latest footballer to take part in the charity's first ever in-person session.
Allow yourself to be disappointed.
I enjoy passing on experiences. You know, if it's about mental health, my career, the pressure I've been through, giving my experience to the younger generation is something that I really like. In earlier years, we didn't really speak about it, you know, so it's just we get along and we.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Thanks so much, Jackie. Great to have you at the Breakfast Bar this Monday. Loving it.
It's great to be here.
Still to come after a short break here on The Breakfast Show. We'll be discussing the stories making news today with Mari.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
An enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States.
It's a border where they're not welcome, yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff. There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We've been crushed. Free from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News at the full story first. Well, hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right, i.e. fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
You're looking at live pictures right now of Los Angeles. We've been reporting on Sky News Breakfast over the last few days of protests taking place. As you can see, vehicles now on fire, utter chaos as emergency service and rescue teams try to dampen the fires that are roaring there. It's been days and days of people angry about Donald Trump's immigration raids, and people are out night after night protesting, looting, setting cars on fire. So we're going to keep an eye on this story throughout the day. We'll dip back in with our correspondent, Martha Kellner. She'll bring us the very latest there. But these are the scenes at 10 to 11 o'clock in the evening in Los Angeles, and it doesn't seem like the chaos is dampening anytime soon. So that's just the very latest. Shall we kick off our news review here in London with Mari? Mari, great to see you. Happy Monday, by the way.
Happy Monday.
Goodness me, it's been a weekend of it, hasn't it? We'll start with Rachel Reeves and her standoff, really, overspending with different departments. And we're hearing, aren't we, actually, that it's not all well and good. Things haven't been tied up and signed off just yet. And this is in The Guardian.
Yes. So we've been talking a lot about the spending review, understandably. It's coming on Wednesday, 2 days left to wait. And we were talking earlier, weren't we, about the fact that it appears that Rachel Reeves is still at loggerheads with the Home Office. So the Guardian's reporting something similar, saying that Rachel Reeves and the Home Office are locked in a standoff around policing budgets. We were talking about winners and losers, weren't they? Yeah. So Guardian saying NHS, Defence and Tech are the winners. Well, we all know that, don't we? And interestingly as well, they're saying that actually there was negotiating still last night between Angela Rayner and Rachel Reeves. So as we were saying, really going to the wire. Now, interestingly, Whitehall sources have been telling The Guardian the policing budget will not face a real terms cut, which will obviously come as some level of a relief to police chiefs who've been, writing in newspapers and writing letters to the Prime Minister and doing quite a lot of kind of public applications or appeals, let's say, to the government to give them more cash. And interestingly, the disagreement appears to be over the level of investment needed for the Home Office in order to meet its commitments. So it's important to remember that, actually, in terms of manifesto pledges, the Labour government, well, Labour Party at the time, they promised to bring more money into the Home Office. An extra 13,000 new police officers was something that was promised. And so police chiefs are now worrying about how they can deliver that if their budgets are cut. And there isn't time to go into all the detail, but it's interesting just to see the kind of wranglings and the real kind of difficulty that Rachel Reeves is having, it looks like, with her Home Office budgets.
Yeah, and where the tensions really lie. Let's move on briefly to the newspaper. Complaints to Ofsted, the education watchdog, about special educational needs within schools, and complaints about how that's treated has soared, according to latest stats from this paper. So it's soared by 58%. And this is a personal one, close to my home, really, with a 7-year-old with dyslexia. And we're going through that process of diagnosing that. And the state of SEND provisions within English state schools vary. But parents are fed up. And this has led to 3,929 complaints about special needs provisions within schools. Often what you'll find is that there's a special education teacher inside the school, maybe 2 days a week. It's not enough. And that's the state of play at the moment. There's a lack of access to staff being tailored in how to treat children and how to learn children. And recently I was at a screening of Jamie Oliver's Revolution in Dyslexia, because he's one of the many famous people that have dealt with dyslexia through childhood and in his career now. And he's saying, look, if we raise our schools to deal with all children in the classroom through a dyslexic lens, there's so much uplift. But as yet, there's no extra funding, no new money, essentially, to help new teachers in the provision of special needs and teaching those teachers how to handle it, or a top-up for teachers that are currently in the system. Yeah. So it's a huge headache. I know there's been money sidelined for education by the next Parliament. Mari, it's not enough. It really isn't enough for the kids and the teachers on the front line of where this hits right now. So it's really close to my heart. I just wanted to bring that up because I'm really cross that there are so many kids in the classroom now that feel like they're the problem. And I don't usually bring too much personal stuff to Sky News, but I'm sorry, we've lost a lot on that, on our paper review there, but it's one that I hope we'll be grilling our politicians about later. Kamali will be joining us after a very short break to take on and tackle the day's news with us all. Thanks for your company.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration.
Sky News, get the full story first.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News.
Is the West right, i.e. fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Hello and good morning. It is 7 a.m. and on today's show, tear gas, rubber bullets and burning vehicles in downtown Los Angeles in a third day of unrest over immigration raids.
Plus, a huge week ahead for the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, with the Home Office still holding out for more money in Wednesday's spending review.
And can AI be trusted, with a special report from Sam Coates on how ChatGPT apparently made things up and lied to him.
It is Monday, the 9th of June. Police in LA say they are overwhelmed by violence as protests there intensify.
Projectiles are being thrown at the police officers, and in turn, they're deploying these rubber bullets and tear gas.
Also ahead this morning, Israeli troops board an aid ship carrying Greta Thunberg and other activists to Gaza, all on board, have been detained. More than 1,000 doctors write to MPs urging them to vote against the assisted dying bill.
And in sport this morning, Carlos Alcaraz fights back to win the French Open after more than 5 hours on court. Plus, the Queen's Club prepares for the first women's tournament in more than half a century in the shadow of a tennis equality round.
Hello and good morning. A busy morning ahead. There's been a third night of chaos in the US city of Los Angeles. Police used tear gas and fired rubber bullets into crowds who were protesting over immigration raids. Well, President Trump has deployed the National Guard, who are positioned at points across the city. These are the latest live pictures from Los Angeles, where you can see the huge police presence on the streets. Not many protesters in these images are taken from this helicopter camera. But the president, as well as deploying the National Guard, has also put Marines on standby. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner reports.
In the heart of LA's downtown, cars on fire and tensions inflamed. Emotions stoked by the president's decision to deploy the military here. The Mexican flag is flying and anger directed at ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, after a series of raids.
This is where Donald Trump's immigration policies have ended up, almost 5 months into his presidency. Pandemonium and lawlessness on the streets of one of America's biggest cities.
The protests are now in their third day, initially sparked by raids on workplaces across LA, a search to round up illegal immigrants. President Trump said he deployed the National Guard because the demonstrations here were out of control, but the protests had been mainly peaceful before. And now this.
Projectiles are being thrown at the police officers, and in turn, they're deploying these rubber bullets and tear gas. The California Governor Gavin Newsom says that this chaos is exactly what President Trump wants.
Newsom argued the president had breached state sovereignty by ordering the National Guard here against his wishes. Trump described LA as an invaded and occupied city. Politicians on both sides of the aisle condemning the violence. This woman, one of a number arrested.
Why are you here today? Because a lot of my people are getting taken away. We've lived here all our lives, and it's like, how are you going to send us back to a place where we don't even know? You told us to come here for opportunity. We came, and it's like, I don't know, what do we do from here?
They shot me in the leg with a rubber bullet. They hit me in the head. If you can see under my hair, there's bruising.
This is the most significant pushback yet against Donald Trump's immigration policy. One of the key arteries of this city, the main road in downtown Los Angeles, completely closed as police encircle protesters.
The president said that any violence which impeded officials would be treated as a form of rebellion. More protests are planned through tonight and into tomorrow. The White House crackdown on immigration has definitely been divisive. The fight back here clearly bringing some together. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Los Angeles.
Well, this is the scene in downtown Los Angeles right now. As I said before we went to Martha's reporting, you can see there's a huge police presence there.
Yeah, just covering this over the weekend on Breakfast Sunday. This time, Sunday morning, the same type of standoff was happening. And we spoke to journalist Maria Garcia, who said she was in a restaurant talking about human rights and talking about the issue of immigration while there were helicopters above. And I suppose the real impact on people living in neighbourhoods close by is what we're not hearing at the moment. But it's chaos, people say. It's scary, there's fear, there's anxiety. And there doesn't seem to be a sense that things are calming down right now.
There's lots of fear across communities as well, not just in places like California. It's all across the country. Anyone who is an immigrant to the United States is feeling quite unstable right now.
We'll hear from Martha a bit later on this story. So do stay with Sky News Breakfast. Elsewhere, Israel has prevented an aid ship carrying Greta Thunberg and other activists from reaching Gaza. Now, the Freedom Flotilla Coalition had organised the voyage to try and break the naval blockade of Gaza. They say the ship was carrying baby formula, food and medical supplies. Israel's foreign ministry called it a selfie yacht and sent troops to intercept it. So let's bring in our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, who can bring us up to date with what's going on. Alistair, what do we know? What's the very latest so far? Morning.
Well, the Israeli commandos from Shayatet 13, so really it's the Israeli equivalent of the Navy SEALs, US Navy SEALs, or the British SBS, they surrounded and boarded the ship around about 3:30 in the early hours of this morning, when it was still quite some way off the coast of Israel and the coast of Gaza. And everything seemed to actually go very, very smoothly. About half an hour after that, the Israeli foreign minister put out a tweet saying that Israeli forces were on board, they had control of the yacht, and they were now bringing it to where I am now, the port in Ashdod in Israel. They also posted photographs and some video of Israeli soldiers handing out bottles of water and sandwiches to the crew. So they will be towed to this port here in Ashdod, a massive port on the Israeli coast. Israel Katz, who's Israel's defense minister, said in a statement that he has instructed the military and the Israeli police to make all of those on board, including Greta Thunberg, French MEP as well, on board to watch the 43-minute uncensored film that Israel put together showing a lot of the raw footage on October the 7th. He described Greta Thunberg as being anti-Semitic and her other activists as being pro-Hamas. So they'll get here, and then at some point they'll be deported back to their home countries.
Alistair, for now, thank you so much for that update.
Now, more than 1,000 doctors have written to MPs urging them to vote against the assisted dying bill.
As you can see, we're joined in the studio by our health correspondent, Ashish Joshi. Great to see you, as always. Morning.
Ashish,
so give us a bit of an insight. What does the letter actually say, Ashish?
This is a letter which has been backed by over 1,000 doctors just over the weekend. So this is a network of doctors who have real concerns about the assisted dying bill. And that's important because this week it returns to Parliament. Next week, MPs will vote on it for the final time. This is an attempt by a substantial number of consultants, very senior doctors in the profession, a lot of them who deal in palliative care, who are genuinely concerned that there aren't enough safeguards. This will see an erosion of palliative care, the impact on the medical profession, and the widening of social inequalities. All arguments that we've heard before, but for the first time, we have a significant body of medical professionals expressing their concerns and trying to convince MPs who will be voting next week to vote against the bill. A section of the letter which really highlights exactly what they feel is wrong with it. It says, as experienced medical professionals who regularly work with dying patients and who have reviewed the worldwide evidence on assisted dying, it is our opinion that this bill poses a real threat to both patients and the medical workforce, and we urge you to vote against it.
Interesting, and it's moving along, isn't it, Ashish? Because, of course, when Kemble Bitter first got this bill to be discussed in Parliament, there was a sense of, while there was some debate around it, that it may well pass, but it seems as if the resistance to it is hardening now.
It passed with a majority of 55 votes, and we know that since then, on the record, we have at least a dozen MPs who have changed their position. So that brings it down to sub 40. Suddenly, you're in the, is it going to pass comfortably, to there are real concerns, and could it change? I spoke to senior figures within the pro-assisted dying camp, if for want of a better word, yesterday, and they said, we expect opposition to the bill. This is a hugely controversial piece of legislation which will change the social fabric in this country forever. So they're expecting opposition to the bill. So this isn't completely unexpected. But I think the significance is the number of voices who have added their signatures to this letter. Let's listen now to what Professor Colin Rees, one of the signatories of the Let's Say, and why he has specific concerns.
So this is the single most important piece of healthcare legislation in 50 or 60 years, and it will have very profound consequences for the future. And many doctors are really concerned that members of Parliament are not hearing the views of the medical profession. I would add that lots of doctors remain neutral or may support the principle of assisted dying, but are very, very concerned about this particular bill. We don't think it's a bill that is safe, that protects patients, protects families and protects the medical workforce.
That's Colin Rees, one of the signatories. We're going to speak to him actually around about the 8 o'clock hour as well. Ashish, thank you for that. Of course, it's a story we're going to be keeping across all morning here on The Breakfast Show.
What I'm going to do now is take viewers through some other stories this Monday worth mentioning, and it's all to do with the NHS issuing an urgent call for blood donors. It's reported stocks are dangerously low. This is after a cyber attack last year that crippled its supply. The Health Service says there's a critical need for black donors and for those with O negative blood, which is used in emergencies. Nurses will start voting on the government's pay offer today. It's an increase of 3.6%, around 345,000 Royal College of Nursing members in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will be asked if that's enough, and they may decide it's not, and that could take us closer to strike action. This extraordinary story. A man has been detained after escaping on a taxiway. It was at Heathrow Airport. It happened around 8:30 last night, with Big Jet TV capturing the incident. Heathrow says the individual has been removed from the airport. And then for the first time, the Brit Awards are going to be held outside of London. The biggest night in British music will be held in Manchester next year. Great city, with organisers saying the switch will invigorate the show, which I think it will.
Yeah, I can co-sign that about Manchester being a great city. It's going to be a good night for the Brit Awards. Mari is here with us. Thanks for being with us. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is going to set out the government's spending plans on Wednesday, but just with a couple of days to go, there's still no agreement with the Home Office, one of the big departments of state. Mari, tell us why haven't the Home Office been able to sign off the money they're going to get?
So there's been a lot of kind of quite public interventions from police chiefs or sources, allies of the Home Secretary around this. And the difficulty is essentially that there's concerns around the fact that they don't believe they'll be able to deliver the kind of targets that Labour set in their manifesto, 13,000 new police officers, for instance. They don't believe that that is deliverable with potentially the cash that they are expecting to receive. So they are trying to push to get more from Rachel Reeves. And obviously, every department want their own cash. They want as much cash as they can. Every Secretary of State, that is their job, to try and get as much cash as possible. We already had interventions from Sir Mark Rowley, for instance, and other police chiefs last week. Again this morning, we've got 2 police chiefs writing in the Telegraph, again saying that these targets are potentially being put in jeopardy. And so essentially, Yvette Cooper is the last man standing. So we understand here at Sky News that Angela Rayner has now finalised that spending envelope for her department.
Right.
Over the weekend, we understand there were still negotiations and she hadn't fully settled. Now it appears that that's been settled. So it is just the Home Office left to go, and they are clearly holding out for what they believe to be a fundamental amount of money. Let's also not forget that, actually, when it comes to some of the biggest pledges in Keir Starmer's premiership, and for, hopefully, if he becomes Prime Minister for the next 4 years as well, he is going to want to deliver on things like small boats crossings, on things like the asylum bill, on hotel bills for the asylum system, which sits within the Home Office budget. And so Yvette Cooper is clearly looking at some of these targets and some of these really politically toxic areas and thinking to herself, this is all on me, and if I haven't got the cash to do it, I'm going to be blamed, but without, essentially with my hands tied behind my back. And that's how she's feeling, and therefore that's why this is still going to the wire.
Yeah, but TikTok is coming Wednesday. They've got to print the thing as well, haven't they?
You've got 2 days.
Right, OK, well, Mari will keep across that, of course, another day. Good luck. All right, now, the Prime Minister is going to announce that he is putting AI at the heart of plans to boost the economy.
The
nasty. Big question that, isn't it? Our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, was left rather perplexed when ChatGPT tried, in his words, to gaslight him. Let's take a look.
Artificial intelligence, AI, the future of work, life, and we are to be told this week, government, helping the state work better and cheaper. But this comes only days after Sky News revealed how AI can fabricate, lie, then doubles down.
This is meant to be what I just recorded, but it had made it all up. I mean, at this point, ChatGPT is gaslighting me. No such thing exists. It's all complete fake. And finally, AI confesses. Look at this.
Oh, wow.
Since we revealed on Friday that AI invented an episode of our Politics at Sam and Anne's podcast, I've been flooded with other examples of AI hallucinations, which feel like lies. Here's a former business secretary who oversaw AI policy with this.
When I queried it, it admitted that it was wrong and gave me an answer that was completely different.
He's also a former Select Committee chair who investigated AI last year.
When I chaired the Science and Technology Select Committee, hallucination was one of the problems, but it was expected to diminish over time. But what we seem to have discovered, and when I say, Sam, your exchange with ChatGPT, it seems to admit that actually they're certainly not fading away and might even be getting worse.
But is it? We decided to ask ChatGPT itself using its conversation mode to find out more.
I'm just your friendly AI assistant, here to help you out with anything you need.
Now, research by ChatGPT's parent company suggests new models released in recent months have more hallucinations, as much as 48% of the time in some cases. But does it think it's lying more or less?
Yeah, the concept of AI hallucinations is definitely something that's been talked about, and it's still a challenge. The technology is always improving, and newer versions tend to do a better job at staying accurate.
See there, it's saying things are getting better, but the data suggests the opposite, so I press it.
Hang on. Can you give me the specific stats from the most recent OpenAI study into the newest models of ChatGPT's hallucination rate?
So according to recent internal tests from OpenAI, the newer models have shown higher hallucination rates. For instance, the model known as O3 had about a 33% hallucination rate, while the O4 mini model had around 48%.
A moment ago, you told me it was getting better. Now you're telling me you're confessing it's getting worse. This isn't a great look.
I get where you're coming from, and I'm sorry for the mixed messages. The performance of these models can vary.
It's London Tech Week, fronted by a Prime Minister who hopes AI has answers for his government too. But are we all too trusting? Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, I'm very pleased to say we're now joined by Minister of State for Data Protection and Telecoms, Sir Chris Bryant. So, Chris, thanks so much for being with us this morning, and good morning to you.
Thank you for having me.
You've seen that report from Sam. You can't trust AI, can you?
Well, AI is at the foothills, I think, of where it will end up. And AI was made for humanity, not humanity for AI. So we need... And we already know that within AI, it's developed its own concept of hallucination. So we know that it's going to have to get better. And sometimes that depends on the quality of the data goes into it.
That's right, yeah.
Which is why one of the things we've been very keen to say is that as we go forward, we think that AI needs to pay for the material that it's using to train its large language models. That's why we're in favour of proper remuneration for people in the creative industries and for a licensing scheme. You probably know that the UK is the second. It exports more books than any country in the world. I'm really keen, and having talked to lots of publishers in the UK, they're licensing AI companies for the precise reason that they want, A, to be remunerated, but also they want AI to be based on high-quality data and not fake data.
So you want creators to get the money that they're owed when their art is being used by artificial intelligence?
Yes, we've always said from the very beginning that we do want to get to a state where creators who in the analogue era have been able to protect their their rights from other people using them without permission are able to have exactly those same rights in the digital era.
But no regulation on AI yet. Why?
Well, we will get to it. I mean, we
will get to it.
Yes, we will get. Yes, of course. You know, we came into government last year. Nobody had done any work in this area at all in government. They've made lots of big statements about it, but they'd not done any of the preparatory work. We produced a consultation on it earlier on this year. That consultation ended, I think, at the end of February. We are now considering. We had 11,500 people reply in that consultation. Lots of people care about this. We want to make sure that we get that regulation right.
And it's going to follow similar lines to the one that's in the EU at the moment, is it?
No, we are open-minded as to precisely what direction we travel down. I'm very hopeful if we manage to get the data bill, which is going through the House of Lords at the moment, House of Lords and Commons in this ping-pong arrangement. We've got another round of that tomorrow. If we can get that out of the way, then we would very much like to be sitting down with people who are working in the AI companies and in the creative industries together to look at particularly transparency in this sector and how we can get to better licensing arrangements.
Now, you're here to talk about it's Tech Week, isn't it?
Yeah, it's London Tech Week.
Yeah, exactly.
And we are one of the most important tech countries in the world.
Yeah.
We have more AI companies in the UK and more of the AI and computing sector in the UK than anywhere else in Europe. We're the third largest tech sector in the world, and we want to build on that, which is why I'm announcing this morning £187 million of investment in tech skills, because we reckon that by 2030, roughly 10 million people in the UK, it won't just be Sam Coates, 10 million people in the UK will have jobs that have some element of AI involved in their responsibilities.
But you can't be certain that in those years that it's going to get better, may develop more hallucinations, and you're putting it at the very heart of this. It might not be a technology you can rely on.
I think we need to make sure that we get this right, and sometimes that won't just be about what we do in the UK. It's about working with other countries with similar value systems to make sure that we do get it right. But the bit that we must get right is we must invest, hence the £187 million we're investing in. First of all, in students, 1 million kids across the whole of the United Kingdom in secondary schools will be getting enhanced computing and IT skills from next year. We'll have 1,000 scholarships for students, bright students going to university. We'll have 500 PhD candidates receiving £10,000 each to look at ways in which you can use AI and computing skills to drive forward innovation in the economy. And we'll be doing something in every single locality in the UK to drive up, as I say, not just these skills, but make sure that we've got innovation. Because, you know, it's a really striking fact. There's a hospital in the northeast of England where they employ 32 people to carry around the physical medical records of people. Well, it will make far more sense if all of that was digitally available, because you wouldn't have to employ people to carry them around.
You might lose those jobs. What are those 32 people going to do otherwise?
Well, they could actually be employed in delivering health benefits to people in the NHS. So one of the things I think it's really important to think about as we go into the spending review, which will be announced on Wednesday.
Come on to that.
OK, good. Well, one part of it is obviously making sure that we spend enough money to make sure that we've got the services that we require. But spending money of itself isn't an achievement. Spending money and getting results is, and that's where I think tech and change. We have a really important plan for change in every single part of the way we run the state in this country, and that's going to deliver benefits for everybody.
So you can get 1 million kids working with AI. 77% of kids say that they've used AI to complete homework. Is that cheating to use AI to finish homework?
No, sometimes schools will want them to use AI. Intelligent use of AI alongside an individual thinking is an important way of moving forward. Listen, I remember, I'm much older than you, but I remember when I was doing my O-level, that already ages me, we were allowed to use personal handheld calculators.
Yeah,
I remember the day when they came in, and I thought, hang on, are we only being allowed to use these so that somebody can sell one to me?
I'll give you my age as well. They took it away for the year after me.
But it's a serious point about AI is made for humanity, not humanity for AI. So you need to have the two working.
But as long as you keep it safe and as long as you have enough regulation.
100%. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you.
Politically neutral as well. You know what?
I'm passionately agreeing with you.
Good. I agree. I like that you agree with me. The spending review then.
Yeah.
So there are going to be some departments that are going to miss out. As Mario was telling us, the Home Office haven't signed off.
I don't know whether they have or they haven't yet signed up. But look, I mean, as I said earlier, everybody knows this country's got to change. We've got to change direction. And the only way we're going to do that is if you have a plan for change. And a lot of that is embraced by how we spend our money. So we know that we've got to spend more money on defence, but we've said we're not just going to spend more money on defence to ensure our security, but we're also going to make sure that we've got a defence industrial strategy. So there'll be munitions factories in different parts of the country. That's about jobs as well. And secondly, we know that we've got to get the NHS back to the place where it should be. I'm really delighted that thanks to the £22.6 billion we've already invested in the NHS, that waiting lists are now falling month after month after month. People know that that's happening, and that's great. But we've still got to drive forward greater investment in those public services, as long as it drives forward change as well. So just one tiny example, we've put £50 million extra into the NHS app. We know that will save £200 million and make it in the next few years, and make it easier for people to have access to the NHS. So I think there are double benefits where we can make investment, but also make sure that we're driving forward change.
Yeah, absolutely. It's still not clear exactly where those factories are going to be built for the investment in military infrastructure.
No, but for the first time,
they're going to come online either. Is that going to?
They will come online. But the most important thing is we've actually got an industrial strategy in this country. We've needed one for ages, and in the next few weeks we'll also be announcing an industrial strategy in the creative industries, for which I have responsibility, space and advanced telecoms, a whole series of different areas.
So, Chris, thank you for that. Listen, you will have seen the report from Ashish, and we're going to speak to Colin Rees later about assisted dying. There's a growing number of people, doctors and some politicians, who are now voting against the bill, worried about the safeguards. There's a vote coming in on Friday. How did you vote previously, and are you persuaded by some of the arguments you've heard in recent weeks?
So, as you know, the government doesn't have a formal position at all. Individual members are free to choose how they vote. I'm not going to hide my own personal preference. I abstained on the first time round. I decided I wasn't going to vote because I wanted to hear the debate. I've listened to a lot of the debate. Of course, I don't want anybody to feel that they're a burden on society and feel that should lead them towards taking their own life. But I also have heard the cries of people who are absolutely miserable, and that's why I will be voting for the bill.
You'll continue to vote for the bill on Friday?
That is my plan. But as I say, the government has no formal position at all.
Okay. So, Chris Bryant, good to speak with you. I'm glad we managed to agree on that subject around AI.
You agreed with everything I said, I think, didn't you?
Yeah, definitely. You've never been wrong. Good morning to you. Thank you. All right, still to come on The Breakfast Show. London prepares to host the US and China for a second round of trade talks. And we'll be joined by the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey, who's calling on the Chancellor to rule out cuts on social care.
we've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Hello there and welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up, we're going to have more from LA and we'll talk about the latest round of trade talks between the United States and China. They're being held here.
Yeah, in London. So let me just bring viewers up to date with some of the day's other stories then. It's been a tense few hours, hasn't it, in Los Angeles, with protests and clashes on the streets for the third day. As Kamali was saying, tear gas and rubber bullets have been used against those demonstrating against immigration raids. And President Donald Trump has sent in the National Guard. We'll be hearing from Martha Kellner a bit later on. Elsewhere, the Israeli Foreign Ministry has confirmed that the aid ship, the Madeleine, is making its way to the shores of Israel. The vessel had been carrying dozens of activists, including Greta Thunberg, who were seeking to break the naval blockade of Gaza. More than 1,000 doctors have written to MPs urging them to vote against the assisted dying bill, calling it a real threat to both patients and the medical workforce. And the Chancellor is set to unveil the government's spending review this Wednesday. Unlike the autumn budget, when Rachel Reeves plans on where to tax and borrow to fund overall spending levels, the spending review will set out exactly how the money is divided up between the different government departments.
Thank you for that, Leah. It's just going to be really difficult for Rachel Reeves to come up with where that money is going to go. We'll find out in a few days. Now, back to our top story, and a third night of chaos in LA as protests there continue against immigration raids. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner has the latest.
It's certainly a lot quieter here than it was just a few hours ago. Most of the protesters seem to have heeded police warnings to leave this area or face arrest. But the streets in this part of downtown LA bear the hallmarks of a day of messy and at times violent protests. There are cars burnt out, there are streets strewn with debris, water bottles, cans, rubber bullets that law enforcement fired on protesters. Many of the buildings here too, especially the federal buildings, have been graffitied with anti-Donald Trump, anti-immigration, anti-law enforcement graffiti. But things definitely calmer than they were this afternoon and into the early evening. And in fact, just over here, you'll see that the 101 freeway, which was the highway that you saw in my piece, the busiest road in this part of LA, it was shut for much of the day as police had a standoff with protesters. Well, now one side of the road is back open again. That's back moving. Police just looking to reopen the other side of the road too. Just a word on as well on Donald Trump's immigration policy. His immigration policies in the polls have received net positive approval ratings. Those polls taken before these at times violent protests in LA. So it's not clear how that will change the public impression of Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. But you have to imagine that he'll be relishing the idea of a head-to-head with a blue state over one of the key pillars of his presidency, and that is the crackdown on illegal immigration.
That's Martha Kellner reporting there, and of course we'll have more from Martha and team throughout the day here on Sky News. Now, delegates from the United States and China are going to meet in London today for a second round of trade talks. The first held last month in Geneva went surprisingly well. But since then, the Trump administration has accused Beijing of breaking some of the agreements that they reached.
Yeah, let's dig into this then. We're joined by Charles Parshon, Chief Advisor at the China Observatory. He spent 2 decades working in China as a diplomat. Charles, just bring us up to speed of the significance of this meeting and also perhaps the significance of why it's in London too. Good morning.
Well, I suppose on the latter question, London is neutral territory and roughly halfway between Beijing and Washington, and neither side, I suspect, wanted to hold it in the other side's capital. But of course, it's a very significant meeting because of the economic effects of there was a breakdown between China and America on trade. But in terms of what's going to come out of it, well, I mean, we saw in May back in Geneva that they negotiated down from tariffs that basically were at a level which stopped all trade, 145% and 125%, down to, one might say, a more manageable 30 and 10%. But President Trump likes tariffs, so I think that we shall see some those maintained. But I think there's a broader issue than this. I mean, people talk about a trade war, but actually, if you look at what the Chinese say, they talk about a science and technology war. And indeed, they talk, if you look at this sort of, in a sense, a clash of economic systems, political systems, it's an ideological war. They've weaponized, the Chinese have weaponized rare earth exports, and that will have an enormous effect on Western economies if that's held to. And meanwhile, the USA has weaponized high-level semiconductors, high technology, and things like aircraft components and engines to China's, which will stop, if carried through, China's attempts to develop an airline industry, which is a plane manufacturing industry. So all that's extremely worrying, I think, from a global economy's point of view.
Yeah, they'll want to... Charles, it's Kamali here. They'll want to get the wheels turning, won't they? Going to get trade going again. It's interesting that you describe London as neutral territory. I mean, the US is meant to be an ally and China's described as a strategic challenge. So the idea that this place is neutral territory between the two probably tells us more about the Trump administration and our current relationship with those guys. Look, the trade is worth some 600 billion, or that's at least as much has been lost by these tariffs. From your answer, it seems as if you think that the Chinese have recognised there might be more that they can do to try and change some of their trade practices to make a more even playing field.
Well, I mean, the Chinese Communist Party is very rigorous in pursuing its interests and aims. So it clearly recognises the need for, perhaps one might say, a tactical retreat, because if its exports to the United States and to Europe and Britain are curtailed, that means large amounts of unemployment in China, and that leads to large amounts of discontent and possibly more demonstrations and riots against the regime, because there isn't really a proper social security net. So that's important. But I don't think that in the longer term we should doubt on either side, whether that's the Americans or the Chinese side, a intention to de-risk, if you're being polite, or decouple to prevent these dependencies. So in the case of the Americans and indeed European allies, can we start processing rare earths so that we're not dependent on China on that side? And of course, on the Chinese side, a massive investment in science and technology so that they're not dependent on America and Europe.
So it could be mutually beneficial. We'll see what comes out of these talks, Charles. While I've got you as well, you will have seen the debate for the past few days about this new Chinese super embassy in the City of London. The US not happy about the idea of it being built there because of the security risk. There's some within the UK security establishment that seem to take that position as well. What's your sense of it, and whether or not that this building, this embassy, should go ahead right in the city?
Well, my opinion of this is if there is indeed a security issue and that there are some very sensitive cables running underneath that embassy, then of course, as the Prime Minister and the Chancellor and David Lammy have said, national security is number one, and therefore it shouldn't go ahead. But the other question is, if those cables do exist, and we don't really know, we outsiders, can they be rerouted? And if so, Who pays for it? Well, maybe that's the price that the Chinese would have to pay to get their embassy. But I think that's the main issue, the security issue. People say, well, they shouldn't be that close to or that big or in London, but I don't think that's the main issue. It is the security issue, and those of us on the outside don't know the truth about those cables. The government does, and if they are there, then of course security comes number one.
Absolutely. All right, Charles Parton from the Council on Geostrategy. Thank you very much for being with us, Charles. Have a good morning.
Pleasure.
Well, as you can see, Jackie's here, which is always a treat for us on a Monday morning. But you're here specifically, Jackie, to talk about the Queen's Club, because for 50 years it's been exclusively male. That's changed
I know,
today.
It's weird, isn't it? It's called Queen's Club, and there was no women's tournament there. But actually, today, for the first time, there will be, for the first time since 1973. And I think it's fantastic for the women because there's Olga Morozova, who won it in 1973. She won the singles. Billie Jean King was in the doubles. And Sir Paul McCartney in Wings was #1. I mean, that is how long ago it was. This is a really important grass court tournament for the men. It's their key warm-up match tournament for Wimbledon. And it's very prestigious. And Andy Murray's won it, 5 times. It's amazing that the women have not had an equivalent until now. There's the new trophy. It's the same size as the men's. What is not the same size is the prize fund. This is not the fault of the tournament. It's because the WTA, the Women's Tour, sets the levels of prize money. The men's tour sets theirs. And I think it's very much dependent on sponsorship, TV money, all of that. But when you have rows breaking out at the French Open amongst players, female players, who are wanting to know at the French, why did you never put any of our matches in the prime time slot?
It's ridiculous.
There wasn't a single one. That kind of shows us you don't view us as the same level as the men. I spoke to Laura Robson yesterday. She is the tournament director. I mean, what a busy woman she is. She's a commentator, she's a presenter, and now she's the tournament director of this brand new tournament at Queen's. She said they are trying to sort of bridge that gap and make it as equal as possible. The prize money, they're aiming to make it the same level as the men by 2029, which will be ahead of the rest of the women's tour. She said, all I can do is give them the best platform possible and make it as equal as possible.
As a tournament director of the women's event, all I can do is prioritise the players that I have this week, give them the best platform, and in that, I think we have it because we have the same, TV provider covering both men's and women's event. We have the same across the 2 weeks in terms of visibility, and we're going to put out the best player field and schedule that we can on a day-to-day. So I think for this week we're doing all that we can, and then it's up to the other tournaments to put the women on the same pedestal as the guys are.
Absolutely right about that. I mean, when we were talking earlier, I just thought that Queen's was the men's warm-up tournament and Eastbourne was the women's tournament, but I was wrong about that. That's not the first time.
But you were a little bit right, because they used to have, in 1973, they had a women's tournament alongside the men's, and then they realised there really wasn't enough space and there were too many matches, so they moved the women's to Eastbourne. And then that has become a mixed event as well, and also a very important event too in the build-up to Wimbledon. But now they've got their own event, which will be equally as prestigious, and I think they've had no problem in getting players to be in this tournament. They've got multiple Grand Slam winners in it. You've got the US Open champion Madison Keys. You've got Elena Rybakina, who won Wimbledon quite recently. You've got Kvitova, who won Wimbledon twice, and of course you've got Emma Raducanu, the former US Open champion, and she was practising yesterday. She's not practised much on grass, she said, because she's been suffering with a back spasm, which is an injury that's sort of plagued her on and off. She said she's not really practised much on grass. I think this is perhaps her second or third day on the grass. And she had not very high hopes for this tournament. She had low expectations, but she starts today, not in the singles, but in the doubles, which she never plays. She's teaming up with the British #1, Katie Bolter, to play doubles. And she said she used to come to this tournament with her dad as a child to watch the men. So she's really excited about actually playing it.
I'm happy to be here at Queen's. It's an event that I have come to when I was younger, so to be back and be playing it is amazing, and first time there's a women event for a very long time, so looking forward to that, and it's going to be great to be playing on home turf with a good crowd.
So Andy Murray will open that tournament today because he's renaming the main court the Andy Murray Arena because he's won this tournament 5 times. So he'll be the first guy there at the women's event, if that makes any sense. We'll be talking a lot more about the French Open, that amazing final in the next hour. Alcaraz and Sinner, Alcaraz winning it for a second consecutive year. It's been called the greatest French Open final ever. So we'll have the action from that.
There it is.
Here it is.
I recorded it because I didn't get a chance to watch it.
5 sets, longest final they've ever had. And how did he win it? He was 2-1 down, 5-3 down, facing 3 championship points, the first man to ever win a Grand Slam from that position. He's a fighter, we'll say that.
Yeah, spoilers there. I was going to rewatch it, I told you that. But you told me
Right.
how he goes through.
That's too late now.
I knew he was going to win, but I didn't know he was going to win like that. All right, Jackie, thank you very much.
Drama.
For now. All right, still to come on The Breakfast Show. We'll be speaking to the leader of the Lib Dems, Sir Ed Davey, ahead of the government's spending review coming Wednesday.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
An enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster that's just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States. It's a border where they're not welcome, yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We're being crushed.
Free from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first.
Well, hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war.
This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Welcome back. Now, on Wednesday, the Chancellor will unveil the government's priorities for the next 3 years in her spending review. Rachel Reeves is going to set out exactly how the money will be allocated in the budget, split up between the different government departments. Now, the leader of the Lib Dems, Sir Ed Davey, is calling on the Chancellor to rule out any cuts to funding for social care. Well, let's bring Sir Ed Davey in now. He joins us live. Good morning to you, Sir Ed. Thanks so much for making the time to speak to us today. So you've had that plea out there. It's in the papers and we're reporting it now. What's your sense as to whether or not there will be cuts to social care and what damage could that do?
Well, Liberal Democrats have been highlighting social care because it's often forgotten.
And we argue that you can't sort out the NHS unless you sort out social care. We were hearing rumours that Angela Rayner, who's in charge of the department that looks after local government, that does most of the commissioning and funding of social care, that she was having real problems. And that's alarmed us, because if councils don't get the money to invest in social care, the knock-on effect for local council taxpayers, for people who need the care, the elderly, the disabled, and then of course the NHS would be huge. So in Carers Week, it's Carers Week this week, where we celebrate all the work done by family carers looking after their loved ones. I think this is the week to make sure we invest in family carers and social care.
Now, this, of course, will have to be balanced against the government's other spending commitments. We've already heard that defence is going to get an uplift. The reporting is that there'll be more money going to the NHS as well. Is there a worry that social care will miss out because of those trade-offs that the government have to have? I mean, it's said that local governments have got an £8 billion shortfall, and as you point out, that's where lots of the social care provision comes from.
Well, Liberal Democrats have supported the increase in defence spending. I don't think there's a trade-off there. What we have argued is that the NHS is rightly a priority. In our general election campaign, Liberal Democrats put the NHS central, but right next to it, we put social care, because we genuinely don't think you can get the improvements in the NHS without getting the care package. Let me give you an example of why that might be. We do find that lots of people end up staying in hospital longer than needed because there's not care home places or care packages so they can go back to their own home. What does that mean? It means that a lot of money is spent just keeping them in hospital where they don't need to be. That means less people can go into hospital because a bed is taken up. And it means they don't get the care that they need back at home. So this is, in many ways, could generate savings long term for the NHS if we invest in social care. I've been arguing in a book I've written recently called Why I Care and Why Care Matters, making the case for looking after family care, for doing the social care reform, because of the benefits it can bring to the economy as well as the NHS.
So, Ed, a couple more topics to get through. So if you wouldn't mind, just a short answer now, because we've got loads of time before the top of the hour. I want to talk to you about assisted dying. You'll have seen our reporting this morning. 1,000 doctors and other experts putting their names to a letter calling for MPs to vote against the assisted dying bill when it's back to a vote on Friday. What's your sense of how this debate has moved, and how will you be voting?
Well, I have voted against this assisted dying legislation, as I did on previous occasions. I have real concerns about the pressure on individuals that they'll put on themselves if they think they're a burden to their family. So I welcome this letter. It's a free vote. I've got many in my party who feel differently to me. And I do think we've had some good debates in Parliament. But I hope as time has gone on, as the arguments have been better exposed, that MPs will switch sides and join the side that I and many others are on. It sounds like these doctors agree with us that this legislation shouldn't go through.
So thank you for that. You will have seen from last week and towards the tail end of last week, the conversation around banning of the burqa is back on the agenda because of a question put by a Reform MP. It was then talked about in an interview over the weekend by the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch. Is there a conversation to be had on banning the burqa, Sir Ed?
Well, first of all, I think these Reform and Conservative politicians are distracting people from the core issues of dealing with the cost of living, which is hitting millions, and things like health and care, which are the priority. And that's what we will focus in on, rather than what people should wear. I'm not sure if politicians should be passing laws on what people wear, frankly.
And Sir Ed, you will have seen that flotilla on its way to break the siege in the blockade in Gaza has been stopped by the Israelis and turned back. Those on board have been detained. How would you describe the current situation in Gaza? What word would you use? And should the UK recognise a Palestinian state?
Well, we should absolutely recognise a Palestinian state. The ceasefire calls have been long and urgent. And I think Israel, under Netanyahu, his government, is behaving outrageously. We absolutely need aid in to the Gazans who are suffering, as well as the hostages out, of course. And Liberal Democrats have called for a whole set of measures to push that forward. We've called for Israeli cabinet ministers to be sanctioned, people like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who've called a fact for violence against Palestinian settlers on the West Bank. We've argued for a ban on arms sales, and we've argued for humanitarian corridors under the United Nations to get aid in to those Palestinians who are starving. So the current situation is quite outrageous, and the international community has got to speak up louder and harder to force Israel to allow aid in, and also to make sure Hamas releases the hostages.
Okay, so Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats, thank you very much for your time this morning. All the best.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's take a look at the day's weather.
The perfect climate, wherever the destination. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, it looks as though high pressure is going to return to settle the weather for the rest of June. For now, it remains unsettled with showers or longer spells of rain. There'll be thundery showers as warmer air spreads up from the south later on this week. It's going to be a dry, bright start to the day for those up early enough, but cloud will increase from the west and they'll bubble up elsewhere, allowing rain to break out. Southernmost counties will stay mostly dry with some good sunny spells. More persistent rain, though, will reach Northern Ireland and Scotland later on in the morning. Temperatures cool to warm.
The perfect climate, whatever the forecast. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Hello and good morning. It is 8 a.m. and on today's show, tear gas, rubber bullets and burning vehicles in downtown Los Angeles in the third day of unrest of immigration raids.
Plus, a huge week ahead for the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, with the Home Office still holding out for more money in Wednesday's spending review.
And can you trust AI? We'll hear from our very own Sam Coates on how ChatGPT apparently made things up and lied to him.
It is Monday, the 9th of June. Police in Los Angeles say they are overwhelmed by violence as protests there intensify.
Projectiles are being thrown at the police officers, and in turn, they're deploying these rubber bullets and tear gas.
Also ahead, more than 1,000 doctors write to MPs urging them to vote against the assisted dying bill. Israeli troops board an aid ship carrying Greta Thunberg and other activists to Gaza. They've all been detained.
And in sport, Carlos Alcaraz fights back to win the French Open after more than 5 hours on court. Plus, the Queen's Club prepares for the first women's tournament in more than half a century in the shadow of a tennis equality row.
Well, thank you for being with us. There's been a third night of chaos in LA. Police used tear gas and fired rubber bullets into crowds who've been protesting over immigration raids. President Trump has deployed the National Guard, who are positioned at points all across the city, and has hundreds of Marines on standby. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner has our top story.
In the heart of LA's downtown, cars on fire and tensions inflamed. Emotions stoked by the president's decision to deploy the military here. The Mexican flag is flying and anger directed at ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, after a series of raids.
This is where Donald Trump's immigration policies have ended up, almost 5 months into his presidency. Pandemonium and lawlessness on the streets of one of America's biggest cities.
The protests are now in their third day, initially sparked by raids on workplaces across LA, a search to round up illegal immigrants. President Trump said he deployed the National Guard because the demonstrations here were out of control, but the protests had been mainly peaceful before. And now this.
Projectiles are being thrown at the police officers, and in turn, they're deploying these rubber bullets and tear gas. The California Governor Gavin Newsom says that this chaos is exactly what President Trump wants.
Newsom argued the president had breached state sovereignty by ordering the National Guard here against his wishes. Trump described LA as an invaded and occupied city. Politicians on both sides of the aisle condemning the violence. This woman, one of a number arrested.
Why are you here today?
Because a lot of my people are getting taken away. We've lived here all our lives, and it's like, how are you going to send us back to a place where we don't even know? You told us to come here for opportunity. We came, and it's like, I don't know, what do we do from here?
They shot me in the leg with a rubber bullet. They hit me in the head. If you can see under my hair, there's bruising.
This is the most significant pushback yet against Donald Trump's immigration policy. One of the key arteries of this city, the main road in downtown Los Angeles, completely closed as police encircle protesters.
The president said that any violence which impeded officials would be treated as a form of rebellion. More protests are planned through tonight and into tomorrow. The White House crackdown on immigration has definitely been divisive. The fight back here, clearly bringing some together. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Los Angeles.
Well, yeah, those pictures from overnight, and that for the past few days, just been extraordinary. That young lady being knocked off the motorcycle by the police just shows how angry that some of those officers are.
Just pictures across the weekend, really. Viewers were watching Sky News Breakfast at the weekend. There were people walking into shops, looting. These are some of the latest pictures. Real standoff between those protesting and law enforcement officers. And if you remember, it was President Trump who said this is what was going to happen. This is what people voted for him to do. Large swathes of America want to see this happening. But there is a sense in neighbouring areas of anxiety and fear over what might happen next. So you can scan the QR code to keep up with the very latest on this story. We'll be dropping in with Martha Kellner too. But this is just the very latest that's occurring overnight, the early hours of the morning in Los Angeles.
We'll see whether those protests continue for another day. Thank you for that, Leah. Now, more than 1,000 doctors have written to MPs urging them to vote against the assisted dying bill.
Yeah. Joining us in the studio, we've got our correspondent, Ashish Joshi, is here, and he's obviously joined by Colin Rees, Professor and co-writer of the letter. Ashish, let's start with you first of all. Viewers might have been following this briefly, but just bring us up to date with the very latest, where we stand.
OK, so the context of this is the assisted dying bill, Kim Leadbeater's assisted dying bill, returns to Parliament this week. More discussion, debates around it this Friday, and then next week there will be a final vote which will ultimately decide what happens to this bill, whether we introduce assisted dying as law into this country or we reject it. 1,000 doctors, over 1,000 doctors, have now written an open letter to MPs expressing their concerns, which Professor Rees will explain when we speak to him. But essentially, they don't want the bill to go through in its current form. It passed with a majority of 55 last time round. Since then, a number of MPs have come out and said they will switch position. So you're in the sub-40 mark with the MPs. That could come down even further. And that's why this body of doctors have now written to MPs saying, these are our concerns, please don't go ahead with the bill in its current form.
Ashish, thank you for that. And Professor Rees is here with us. Morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. So this debate has hardened for those who were against it. Where were you on the topic when this first came forward and Kim Leadbeater first brought this into the House?
So generally, I don't support the principle of assisted dying, but that's not the case with lots of the other signatories of this letter. Lots of the signatories would support the principle, but actually are really concerned about the safety of this particular bill.
OK, and what is it about the safety of the bill? Because Kim Leadbeater has been at pains to point out that she's strengthened the bill as she's gone along, as the debate has continued.
Yeah, I just don't think the bill is strong enough in its safeguards. We are urging MPs to listen to doctors. There is a growing body of opinion amongst doctors that are really concerned about this. As you've heard, 1,000 doctors have signed this letter. The Royal College of Physicians, the Royal College of Psychiatrists, who are neutral on the overall position of assisted dying, have expressed extreme concerns about this bill and its safety. So we just want MPs to listen to the concerns we have about the practicalities of this bill.
And the bill, it cuts party lines, Professor, doesn't it? Where do you think the public currently are sitting on this?
I think it's difficult to know. When we survey the public, there is a general principle that generally people appear to support the idea of assisted dying. But the trouble is, when you probe that, what people mean is understand by that is very different. So many people think that means stopping treatment where it's ineffective. Many actually even think it's sometimes not giving treatment. So I think that you have to take some of these polls with a real pinch of salt, because when people understand more about this, they tend to hold a slightly different opinion.
Professor Rees, can I just ask you, Kim Leadbeater, she's not here to defend her position, but she would argue that this piece of legislation has more safeguards than any legislation passed through Parliament previously. This is modelled on the assisted dying programme in Oregon, which has only had minor changes made since it was introduced. What are your chief concerns that she hasn't addressed?
So I think CIBA Oregon is different. That's in a totally different healthcare system. This would be delivered in a national health service.
Do we know that?
Well, so it's partly delivered privately and partly by Medicaid-type companies, but actually this would be delivered in a national health service. So that's very different. We just do not think this has adequate safeguards for patients, first and foremost, for families of patients, for the medical profession, for palliative care, and for the broader way that we deliver medicine.
OK, can I ask you, sorry, Kamali, the letter went out on Friday, over 1,000 signatories already. Have you had any MPs who have been in touch with you since the publication of the letter who have now said, yes, thank you for sending this letter out, we are now reconsidering our position? Because that's the desired effect, isn't it?
Not yet. I mean, it only went to MPs a couple of hours ago. I've had MPs getting in touch saying they think it's an excellent letter. I would really just urge MPs to read this letter and think about it. I've met with quite a lot of MPs who voted for this bill in the last few weeks. I would just urge them to listen to what we're saying. I think it's absolutely appropriate as a country we have a debate on this subject. I just don't think this bill is the answer. I don't think it's safe. Let's have a debate. Let's have a Royal Commission or something to look at this issue and come back with something that might be safer. But this bill is not safe.
Professor, there could be something that could change, that would change your opinion. I mean, you very honestly said that you were against it in principle from the beginning, but there could be safeguards put in place that would...
I think that many people who have signed this letter would say that their concerns are about this bill. So actually, if... The trouble is that I think this bill needs major surgery, not just minor changes. I think it needs a period of time where we look at it, look at the evidence. That's what we do in medicine. We gather evidence, we do research where the evidence isn't there, and then we come to conclusions. I don't think that's happened here. You know, there's talk about waiting 4 years to implement it. Why don't we wait 4 years, gather all the evidence, and then come back with a bill that's much safer than this one?
Professor Colin Rees and Ashish, of course, thanks, guys, both for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Talking on a very, very important issue.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to take viewers now to our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, because Israel has prevented an aid ship carrying Greta Thunberg, another activist, from reaching Gaza. Ali, you're on a beach, aren't you, where those from the Freedom Flotilla Coordination are organising that voyage. They were trying to break that naval blockade of Gaza, and they say they were carrying baby formula, food supplies, medical supplies. What's the latest, Ali?
Well, this is Ashdod, which is the major port in Israel, huge port in the eastern Mediterranean. This is where the yacht, which has Greta Thunberg, a French MEP, and 10 other activists on, this is where they're going to be bringing them to before they are deported from here. The Israeli military elite naval commander unit intercepted it around 3 a.m. this morning. They boarded the yacht. It was all done pretty peacefully from what we can gather. There's been photos and videos put out on social media by the Israeli Foreign Ministry showing soldiers handing out sandwiches and water to those on board and saying that they'll be brought in here. So they intercepted them before they could breach the blockade of Gaza, the naval blockade of Gaza, which has been in place by the Israelis for many, many years. I think there was a question mark over where exactly they were intercepted, whether or not it was in international waters or within Israeli-controlled waters. But they'll be brought here, and on the instructions of the defence minister, they'll be made to watch the 43-minute video that the Israeli government put together following October the 7th, which is kind of very raw, uncensored footage of October the 7th. Israel Katz, the defence minister, tweeted saying that he would make sure that that was shown to the anti-Semite Greta and her pro-Hamas activist friends on board that ship. So that is what's going to happen. We don't know yet whether they've arrived here at the port or when they might arrive. I suppose that could depend on whether or not they're being kept on the yacht and it's being towed, or whether they've been transferred to another ship. But this is where they're due to come to at some point.
OK, we'll touch base with you if and when we have an update there. Alistair Bunkle, thank you. OK, let's take viewers' views. Some of the other stories making news this Monday. Police have arrested 2 teenagers on suspicion of murder after a 14-year-old boy was stabbed to death in North Manchester. The victim, who hasn't been named, was found by emergency services on Nevin Road yesterday after reports of a serious injury. The NHS has issued an urgent call for blood donors. It's reported stocks are dangerously low after a cyber attack last year that crippled its supply. The health service says there's a critical need for black donors and those with O-negative blood, which is used in emergencies. Nurses will start voting on the government's pay offer today. It's an increase of 3.6%. Around 345,000 Royal College of Nursing members in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will ask if that's enough. Very simple question, and they may decide it's not, and that could take us closer to more strike action. And a man has been detained. This is after escaping onto the taxiway at Heathrow Airport. It happened around 8:30 last night, we're told, with Big Jet TV capturing the incident. Heathrow says the individual has been removed from the airport. And for the first time, the Brit Awards are going to be held outside of London. The biggest night in British music will be held in Manchester next year, with organisers saying the switch will invigorate the show.
Earlier, thank you very much for that. Looking forward to those Brit Awards in Manchester. Now, Mari is here. Rachel Reeves is going to set out the government's spending plans this Wednesday, but with just a couple of days left, there is still no agreement, apparently, with the Home Office. So, Mari, what's all that about? Why haven't the Home Office been able to sign it off?
So it looks like Yvette Cooper is the last man standing on this one. It was Yvette Cooper and Angela Rayner, and now we understand that last night Angela Rayner settled her spending envelope with the Treasury, and therefore it really is just the Home Office left to go. And you ask why? Well, it's difficult. Yvette Cooper is in a really unenviable position in terms of the fact that some of the most important pledges the government has made around small boats crossings, around the spending on asylum hotels, around recruiting police officers and neighbourhood policing and delivering for people and making our streets safer, halving violence against women and girls. There's a lot of really significant pledges linked to the Home Office and that Yvette Cooper is responsible for. And what police chiefs have been saying over the past fortnight is essentially the cash that they are worried is being allocated to the Home Office is not going to be sufficient in order to actually deliver those promises. And so there appears to be this ongoing wrangling between Yvette Cooper and Rachel Reeves. And the question is, will Yvette Cooper come out and say, you know, got extra bit of money, or will she end up with, you know, what you see is what you get, essentially?
We will find out in a couple of days' time, Mari. For now, thank you very much for that. Right, let's just take a look at what's making headlines in some of the morning's newspapers. We'll start with the Eye, which looks at that spending review come Wednesday and suggests planned cuts in personal independence payments may be reduced to stop the descent on the Labour side. The Express goes with the winter fuel allowance, saying that campaigners are angry that the expected U-turn on its scrapping has been delayed until the autumn. And a warning to the Chancellor from police officers, as Mari was just mentioning there, that policing is broken and it needs more money. It's the top story in the Daily Telegraph. Right, well, let's speak now to the Shadow Housing Secretary, Kevin Hollinrake. Kevin, morning to you. Thanks very much for being with us. So, look, this government spending review is coming on Wednesday. Lots of money for defence and for the NHS, it would seem.
Well, let's see. Certainly there's lots of deserving causes out there. But what we're concerned about, of course, you've got a very high-spending, high-tax government. And this more spending is going to mean probably more taxes. And this government said it had a fully costed, fully funded manifesto and ended up whacking the country with £76 billion of tax and spend. Let's see where this money's coming from when it comes.
We were at the highest tax burden for 70 years under your government, weren't we?
And it's even higher now. That's the point. I mean, we had to put taxes up because of all the money we spent through COVID. About £500 billion spent in the economy. Otherwise, millions of people would have lost their jobs. Hundreds of thousands of businesses would have gone out of business. So we had to put taxes up to repay some of that. But the tax burden was on its way back down. That's our plan. With this government, it's going up and up and up.
A couple of other topics I want to talk to you about, Kevin, while I've got you. I know you haven't got loads of time. Assisted dying. So we have Professor Colin Rees on here, who's led a letter from physicians calling for MPs to vote against the bill when it comes back to the House on Friday. What's your sense of the debate at the current moment, and how will you be voting on Friday?
It's a very sensitive issue, clearly. People have their own views. I've spoken to physicians who are supportive of assisted dying, and some will disagree for different reasons. I personally would like to see that legislation passed. I think people should have a choice. When you're at the final stages of your life, remember the conditions of this legislation, you have to be diagnosed with 6 months or less to live through a terminal illness. So I think at that point in time, people should have a choice. I want that choice. I want other people to have that choice.
It should be a personal choice thing. Well, on personal choice, a debate resurrected itself last week from a question in the House of Commons, and then it was brought up again by your leader at the weekend. The banning of the burqa. Why now? Why are we talking again about banning burqas?
Well, I think it was a question that was asked, but I am concerned. Part of my portfolio is community cohesion. I am concerned that some of our communities are dividing. And some of that separation can be because of things like a burqa or other issues. I think the leader of the opposition also mentioned Sharia court she was worried about, and first cousin marriages. Many people are concerned about these kind of things, these changes to our society. So we need to have a proper debate about the burqa. I think Kemi Badenoch said it should be workplace should be able to decide its own rules in terms of dress. That was probably as far as she wanted to go right now, but we need to have a proper conversation.
So you want to open that conversation? I mean, from what you're saying, you're suggesting that a Conservative government would likely ban the burqa, would remove all Sharia courts and any sense of that within the UK, and ban first cousin marriage.
Well, ban the burqa we haven't decided upon yet, and we had to have that debate. I think Kemi said that she wasn't in favour of banning the burqa. There was a personal choice point there. But can I just make the very important point? There's a real concern is some people may be wearing a burqa or a niqab, which is another face veil, because of coercion. I don't want to see that. We're in a tolerant society where people should have free will.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? And many would argue that it is free will for them to choose to dress how they want.
I have concerns that it's not as well at times, and so it's a very, again, a debate we should have, but there's no question there are some certain elements within certain communities that are definitely of the mind that women should dress in a certain way. I think that is wrong. I don't think we should go around telling women what to wear. I think some people in our communities are.
And what then should be done in those communities? What would you like to see community leaders, the government do to try and get involved?
I don't think... I mean, community leaders, to me, are elected councillors, elected members of parliament, elected mayors, those are the community leaders. Those are the people who should speak for everybody in this country, not certain elements of the community. We need to look at these matters very, very carefully and make sure people understand that we are a free and tolerant society in Britain. We always will be. And people who want to reduce some of those freedoms, who think women are inferior to men, who think people of different sexuality don't have a place in the UK, we should say loud and clearly to those people, that has no place in the UK.
Is that what you really think, that they think that women are inferior to men in some communities?
Some communities think that.
Kemi Badenoch also said that if someone came to surgery wearing a niqab, wearing a full face veil, should get them to remove it before speaking to them. Have you come across constituents wearing the veil?
I don't have many Muslim constituents in my constituency, so that's not happened to me, but I would be the same mind. And I think Jack Straw said this years ago. You know, he asked the constituents when he was Home Secretary, I think, to remove a face veil because it can be seen as a barrier to communication.
But that does show a lack of understanding about the Muslim faith. Of course, women wear the face veil and remove it to their husband and close family. Someone like a politician, they wouldn't be able to do that.
Well, I think that should be a choice of the individual member of parliament, which I think Kemi Badenoch has said. I would make the same choice as Kemi. I don't think it's right that somebody covers their face at a surgery, whether it be a balaclava or a burqa.
The debate has now begun. Kevin Holland-Rake, Shadow Housing Secretary, thanks very much for seeing us.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right. Now, the Prime Minister is set to announce he's putting AI at the heart of his plan to boost the economy. But can artificial intelligence be trusted? Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, was left perplexed when ChatGPT tried, in his words, to gaslight him. Take a look.
Artificial intelligence, AI, the future of work, life, and, we are to be told this week, government, helping the state work better and cheaper. But this comes only days after Sky News revealed how AI can fabricate, lie, then doubles down.
This is meant to be what I just recorded, but it had made it all up. I mean, at this point, ChatGPT is gaslighting me. No such thing exists. It's all complete fake. And finally, AI confesses. Look at this.
Oh, wow.
Since we revealed on Friday that AI invented an episode of our Politics at Sam and Anne's podcast, I've been flooded with other examples of AI hallucinations, which feel like lies. Here's a former business secretary who oversaw AI policy with this.
When I queried it, it admitted that it was wrong and gave me an answer that was completely different.
He's also a former Select Committee chair who investigated AI last year.
When I chaired the Science and Technology Select Committee, hallucination was one of the problems, but it was expected to diminish over time. But what we seem to have discovered, and when I say, Sam, your exchange with ChatGPT, it seems to admit that actually they're certainly not fading away and might even be getting worse.
But is it? We decided to ask ChatGPT itself using its conversation mode to find out more.
I'm just your friendly AI assistant, here to help you out with anything you need.
Now, research by ChatGPT's parent company suggests new models released in recent months have more hallucinations, as much as 48% of the time in some cases. But does it think it's lying more or less?
Yeah, the concept of AI hallucinations is definitely something that's been talked about, and it's still a challenge. The technology is always improving, and newer versions tend to do a better job at staying accurate.
See there, it's saying things are getting better, but the data suggests the opposite, so I press it.
Hang on. Can you give me the specific stats from the most recent OpenAI study into the newest models of ChatGPT's hallucination rate?
So according to recent internal tests from OpenAI, the newer models have shown higher hallucination rates. For instance, the model known as O3 had about a 33% hallucination rate, while the O4 mini model had around 48%.
A moment ago, you told me it was getting better. Now you're telling me, you're confessing it's getting worse. This isn't a great look.
I get where you're coming from, and I'm sorry for the mixed messages. The performance of these models can vary.
It's London Tech Week, fronted by a Prime Minister who hopes AI has answers for his government too. But are we all too trusting? Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, we'll ask the man himself. I've just seen Sam Coates, who's arrived in the newsroom, and we'll be speaking to him after this break all about how ChatGPT lied to him. And also one for your diary. At 9 o'clock, the Prime Minister will be speaking to launch London Tech Week. He's expected to talk about the government's announcement this morning, as we heard from Chris Bryant a little while ago, of £187 million for AI training in schools. We'll bring you the Prime Minister's speech live when it begins here on Sky News. All right, well, still to come on the breakfast programme. Where London's Garrick Club is once again embroiled in controversy a year after lifting its men only rule.
we've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right, i.e. fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Hello there, and welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up is artificial intelligence lying to you. Sam and Anna will be here with us for more on that. You would have seen Sam's reporting from this morning. I'm not scared, but Leah's here.
Yeah, I can't wait for that bit. Sam, you held them to account, if I can say that. But listen, let's take viewers through the top stories. And we've been talking about this story all morning. There have been further clashes between police and protesters in Los Angeles overnight. Tear gas, rubber bullets, they were all used on those demonstrating against immigration raids. Protests have intensified. And this is all after President Donald Trump sent in the National Guard. Elsewhere, the Israeli Foreign Ministry has confirmed that the aid ship, the Madeleine, is making its way to the shores of Israel. The vessel had been carrying a dozen activists, including Greta Thunberg, who were seeking to break the naval blockade of Gaza. And more than 1,000 doctors have written to MPs urging them to vote against the assisted dying bill, calling it a real threat to both patients and the medical workforce. And the Chancellor is set to unveil the government's spending review this Wednesday, unlike the autumn budget when Rachel Reeves plans on where to tax and borrow to fund overall levels of spending. The spending review will set out exactly how that money is divided up between the different government departments. And the Prime Minister is set to announce he's putting AI at the centre of his plan to boost the country's economy. But research suggests some models are causing more errors than ever before. And we can expect to hear from the Prime Minister live at 9 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, thank you for that. We'll hear from the Prime Minister at 9. Now, Sam and Anne are here, and the big question is, can we trust artificial intelligence? After, Sam, you had, what should we call it? An interaction? You made a relationship with your chat bot and it lied to you, the thing.
Look, it is inescapable that AI is going to transform workplaces and lives. And I was using it to try and improve just some of the things around the podcast that Anne and I do, things like headlines and how we promote it and just try and chase the sort of like the valuable audiences that you can get if you get those headlines just right. And I discovered it was entirely fabricating episodes. I mean, in the style of Anne and me. I mean, the jokes were better, the points were good.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's more...
My jokes were better. And this has rather started a conversation about, you know, on the day that the Prime Minister is saying he thinks that AI can save the government money and in spending review week, on the day that he's giving money to Teach First in order to try and improve the use of AI in the classroom, you know, there is just a serious question about whether or not AI reliability should be something that we're talking about a lot more, because AI poses itself increasingly in semi-human form. And if you heard the report a few minutes ago, what you'll have heard is an early 30-something from Hoxton, apparently, chatting back at me.
Yeah, well, let's have a listen to you having that chat with the AI.
Can you give me the specific stats from the most recent OpenAI study into the newest models of ChatGPT's hallucination rate?
So according to recent internal tests from OpenAI, the newer models have shown higher hallucination rates. For instance, the model known as O3 had about a 33% hallucination rate, while the O4 Mini model had around 48%.
A moment ago, you told me it was getting better. Now you're telling me you're confessing it's getting worse. This isn't a great look.
I get where you're coming from, and I'm sorry for the mixed messages. The performance of these models can vary.
Sam, I don't think there is anyone in the political landscape that could hold AI account as you have done.
Well, listen, I don't know what you thought, but do you know what that reminded me of?
Go on.
It reminded interviewing a politician. Yeah. And in fact, a little bit later on, I'm hoping that a little bit later on we're going to release the fuller interview. But I actually asked it whether or not, when considering these questions and being challenged, it actually draws on what it's learnt from politicians to deliver the answers.
Yeah.
It actually denied that it did. Is that the truth? I don't know.
But it has one thing in common with politicians, is that it feels it needs to give an answer. I mean, that is a bit of the source of the problem here, isn't it? That Sam, very shrewdly put his finger on in this interaction, that it's sort of whatever you want from it. It's like, well, how can I possibly get this to you? Is there a transcript for your podcast that has not been made yet? Sure, I can do that for you. So it is a bit like talking. I'm sure you've had people sitting on these very chairs saying, don't worry, this is coming down the line. You can expect this from the government or from the opposition. With absolutely no idea how it's going to happen. And I think that is something, there is a bit of a similarity there, but what is absolutely fascinating, of course, is that massive kind of error and untruth that it was able to insert, and that Sam also said that it was going to argue back with Sam.
That's what I quite enjoyed.
Sorry about that, mate.
You were the one that was in the wrong. He was gaslighting. I mean, I did try to get Chris Bryant to deal with this, and he said, by 2030 we're going to have it all across the classrooms. And I said, well, how are we going to be certain by 2030 that it will be safer at that point? Because at this moment, as you say, hallucinations are getting worse.
Look, I'm interested in shining a spotlight on the errors precisely because I think it is an absolutely vital tool. This time last week, we did a different exercise. We used AI to try and project what the spending review was going to say. And I have to say, up to this point...
That's pretty good, isn't it?
So far,
on track.
The story that it told last Wednesday when ChatGPT did the spending review for us is the story that's rolled out all over the weekend. Bigger defence budgets, bigger NHS budgets. Not quite clear that the spending for schools and education is as big as it's first presented. All of that we knew in advance and were better able to understand because of the work it had done. So only by acknowledging and understanding the errors can you actually start to lean into where it's going to transform. Now, I worry that government announcements like the 9 o'clock one from the Prime Minister are more about doing an announcement that sounds like you're in the right place of British politics. And you can put the cart before the horse when you do that, rather than actually transformation itself that properly picks up on the errors. But it's going to make a big difference in government, and we want to understand how that works.
Brian defended it by saying that there was no work done on it by the previous government. I mean, you can tell me whether or not that is really true.
That really is not true, because the AI, I did cover the last AI summit under Rishi Sunak, and to a large extent, the government's AI strategy is a continuation of that by other means, including quite a lot of the same people in the background and advising it. So I don't agree with Chris Bryant on that point. Of course, it should have a different complexion. It should have different priorities. But I think the idea that AI, as Sam says, is transformative. It is going to be across all areas of policy formation, delivery, and education. It doesn't mean to say, also, by the way, I mean, there's no reason that you can't, in classrooms and in the development of AI, factor in the kind of learnings that we've had and say, that this is where the human factor will come in making ensure that we test and check and recheck the right things. But I think to say this is... I don't put words in Mr Bryan's mouth, but I don't think you can sort of blame hallucination entirely on the fact... Do you know why? Because that was under a Tory government. Yeah, I mean, that is really not the case. And we are actually one of the world leaders in AI. Let's not talk ourselves down here. And to that extent, maybe I give, Keir Starmer sort of push this morning, perhaps 2 cheers. We do need to stay on the front foot on this. It is really important for Britain. It's important for growth, but it's also very important to do the reality checks that we've seen here. And I would love a much more cross-party approach on this.
I think I'm listening out for 2 things, and my heckles go up when I hear 2 things. Either a politician that comes at all of this with the Luddite approach, or the unquestioning evangelist. And either of those should come with health warnings. And MPs that do either extreme, it is a useful tool. We need to acknowledge the flaws, and we need to interrogate those.
We're going to hear from the Prime Minister said at 9 o'clock. We're going to have the spending review come on. And I just want to have one more question. Do you know when you were talking to the AI and it was answering back to you, Did you get any sense that perhaps someone had jumped on the chat and was actually responding, or was it definitely always the AI coming through?
It was just the AI. It was absolutely just the AI, and we can do it again later.
Yes, please.
It's crazy, because I thought by the time they, admit the lie, that must have been someone in a call centre who realised.
There were some questions that were arguably a bit trickier, where it had to pause a little longer to think of the answer. When I was like, isn't that wrong? It would go da-da-da-da, and then it would spew out the answer. But we'll release the full interview a little bit later. We're just editing that at the moment, and that'll come out in a bit.
Did you love the line I get? What is it? It says to you at one point, I hear where you're coming from. It's like, no, you really don't, because you not be a human.
That's your code for... I hear what you say, but you're wrong.
My 10 digits are all over the place. I mean, it is it's a very funny and classy listen.
And then just briefly, ahead of the spending review, Sam, what's the mood in government ahead of this?
Look, they're going to be bullish. They're going to tell a story about spending, particularly what's known as capital spending, project one-off spending. Rachel Reeves has something in the order of £113 billion to dole out. But budgets are tight because of our own fiscal rules in other areas. Day-to-day spending in a lot of departments will be squeezed. They will try and tell it all as a positive story. Beware the way they present the figures. Yesterday, we heard £4.5 billion new money for schools. It turns out that's £1.5 billion a year across 3 years, all add up. That's only a 0.4% real terms increase. That isn't something to write home about, whatever Rachel Reeves tells The Observer in a sort of soft soap interview. So I think there is a question about how they look at it, because money is tight because of the choices they've made. So, let's evaluate it properly on Wednesday night and Thursday morning.
Okay. We'll do indeed. All right, Anne, Sam, thanks for that. Looking forward to the podcast. When I get off here, I'll listen to it on the way home. Thanks, guys. All right, we're going to take you to the Israeli port city of Ashdod. These are live pictures right now, where we're expecting to see that Freedom Flotilla aid ship come in. Now, the activists on board, including Greta Thunberg and a French parliamentarian, have all been detained. They're attempting to break the siege of Gaza to deliver aid, but Israel boarded the ship and diverted them. Everyone on board, as I say, is being held, and they're likely to be deported. And we've heard from Ali, who's there in Ashdod, going to watch this ship come in. It's been sailing now for, a day and a bit, and we've seen plenty of social media activity. What did the Israelis call it? A selfie cruise? Yeah, selfie cruise. They said the aid will eventually end up in Gaza, but it will be done via the correct channels. Things like baby formula, food supplies, medicine, but it's a drop in the ocean, of course, of what people need in Gaza at the moment. We'll keep an eye on this once we get any sign of potentially that Madeleine vessel coming in. We'll go live to that. We will do indeed. All right, let's step away from Israel for now. See, Jack is here to talk all about the tennis. Morning to you, Jack. It's good to see you. How are you?
I'm very good.
Lovely.
Spent all day at the tennis yesterday, and you kind of feel a little bit like summer's round the corner when you see grass and
Pims,
Goresby.
strawberries and cream.
There was none of that.
Oh, yeah.
Not yet. It wasn't open yet. But I was at Queen's yesterday because a sort of good news story, really, on the equality front between the men and the women's game. Men have had a Queen's Club tournament for 130 years, 135 years. It's a really prestigious build-up to Wimbledon. It is kind of the tournament to win before Wimbledon, I would say. Now, the women have got exactly the same tournament for the first time since this lady won it, Olga Morozova, in 1973. I mean, it's a really long time coming. But today, for the first time in over 50 years, they will have their own tournament. And it's a great step in terms of, perception of equality. There's the lovely new trophy, which is exactly the same height as the men's trophy. What isn't the same is the prize fund. Now, this is the same across men and women's tournaments all across the board, across the year. The prize funds are just not the same. So for the men's event, it's £2.1 million, and for the women's event, it's £1.1 million, which is far less. This is exactly what happens across the women's sport all year round. The LTA have boosted the fund this year, so this will be the highest women's 500 event that they've ever had. Laura Robson is the tournament director. She said they are doing what they can, and they will continue to do what they can to make it more equal as the years go by. But this year is the best they can do.
The prize money across the tours is decided by the WTA and the ATP. So people see equal prize money at the Grand Slams and think that that happens year round, which is not the case. And so in terms of closing that gap, the LTA have announced that it will be equal prize money by 2029, which is ahead of the standards that the WTA themselves have set. So we're going to hit that marker sooner rather than later. But in order to do so, we need to run a successful event in the first place. And we're going to put out the best player field and schedule that we can on a day-to-day. So I think for this week we're doing all that we can, and then it's up to the other tournaments to put the women on the same pedestal as the guys are.
Yeah, about time, I say, Jackie.
It's
about
a good
time.
lineup as well. Emma Raducanu is playing loads of Grand Slam winners are playing. It's a really good lineup.
And then the French Open, the final. Amazing 5-hour final.
Yeah, that kind of blew everyone's mind yesterday. I mean, no one expected that it would be quite as good as that. These two, Alcaraz and Sinner, number 1 and 2 in the world, have never met in a Grand Slam final before. So it was like, who's going to blink first? Well, my goodness, it went on forever. 5 hours, 29 minutes, the longest French Open final ever. This guy, Alcaraz, who was the reigning champion and won it again against the odds. He was 2-1 down, 5-3 down, and Sinner had 3 championship points, and he managed to come back from that. You've never seen such self-belief on a tennis court, just to sort of power through, and the belief that he was never beaten. And at the end, Sinner was cramping. He must have been exhausted himself, but somehow the tennis just got better and better and better. I mean, it was extraordinary. They are calling it the greatest French Open final of all time. 5 sets, all of it such high-level tennis. And what is nice is they're both so young. He's 22, Sinner's 23.
This is the matchup now.
It's the sort of that is the matchup. This is your Rafa and Federer equivalent matchup, and it's going to go on for years and years. And they seem to push each other to greater and greater heights. And he just said at the end, I wasn't really thinking about what I was playing. I was just playing from the heart. I was instinctively playing. And he when he does that, he plays tennis from another planet, really.
I'm looking forward to watching it.
We were watching it in our house and just screaming at the telly because nobody could quite believe the shots they were managing to play.
I think the first game went about 10 minutes, didn't it? From what...
Yeah, well, I was at Queen's on that one, so I can't tell you, but I can tell you the end was... I mean, Sinner had that in his hand. He had that trophy in his hand. He had one hand on the trophy and still didn't manage to win. I don't know how he didn't cry. I don't know how he didn't cry at the end.
He'll have another chance next year. Jackie?
He'll have plenty of chances, yeah, for sure.
For that. All right, well, still to come on The Breakfast Show. We'll tell you why one of London's private members' club is facing criticism over its treatment of women.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
Enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States. It's a border where they're not welcome, and yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We've been crushed.
Free from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first.
Well, hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war.
This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Welcome back. Now, last year, the Garrick Club, a 200-year-old private members' club in London, decided to drop its men-only rule. But today, a year on, only 3 women have been admitted, and it's being claimed this is due to the long, drawn-out vetting process. Well, here to talk more about this is Emily Bendell, a founder of lingerie brand Blue Bella. Great to have you with us this morning. So just bring us up to date, then. What was your sole reason to take on the Garrick Club?
So for me, look, this is not about men choosing to socialise in men-only spaces. That's up to them and that's their prerogative. The thing about the Garrick is it is a powerhouse of the top level of the British establishment, and particularly in professions like the legal profession, a really high proportion of top judges, lawyers, etc. are members. And so when women are excluded from these very powerful networking spaces, it is detrimental to their progression. And so the Garrick is a particular case where that men-only rule was a problem.
And did you have an application that you put in? Were you trying to...
So this has never been about me. I don't think I'd be very popular at the bar in the Garrick if I joined. So it's not about me wanting to be a member. It's about women that are, you know, in the legal profession, in the other professions that are prevalent at the Garrick, having access to that space and to those networks.
You did put in a membership application, didn't you, right?
Initially, yes, because that was necessary in order to challenge the men-only rule.
Okay.
For the initial legal challenge.
And what did and was there a process? Because there's some reporting that women who want to become members then have to kind of go in and meet the members and have conversations, and then they sort of assess you not only on your conversation skills, but perhaps on the way you look and the way you comport yourself.
So it's a notoriously complex and drawn-out application process at the Garrick, and I think there's sort of 2 stages which are now posing a problem. So the way it works is you're nominated by a couple of members, you're written in your name is written in a red leather-bound book, and then you need 2 pages of signatures of members supporting you. After that, you're invited to kind of a candidacy lunch. So that is now a bit of a problem, right? Because we've seen in the news that Julia Etchingham has withdrawn her application because she found that process to be quite hostile to women. Because it's a very male-dominated space, women are going into that space and may not feel comfortable when there are hostile members.
Look, if Kamali wanted to join it, his vetting process would be long, would be drawn out. No one gets fast access, really. That's the whole issue around it being exclusive, and wouldn't you say?
I think there are 2 problems. One problem is that the final stage of the application process is the committee. And if 4 members of the committee object to somebody joining, they can blackball that membership. Now, it's well known there are a number of committee members that are have been very opposed to women joining at all. So there's a problem there. How will we affect change if there's always going to be that final leg that, these men that don't want women to join are deciding who's acceptable to join the club?
Mari, do you want to come in?
I've got a question on this. So there's been some female politicians who are trying to get into the Garrick Club and, Baroness Hazarika, for instance. My question is, if there are men at the upper echelons of society who are, running the shop, some of the most senior men in the country, if they all want to be together as men without women, What's to stop them saying, OK, if we're going to flood the Garrick Club with women, we'll just create something else or we'll go somewhere else because we don't want that? Is there anything to actually stop them just essentially doing it again somewhere else?
Starting a new Garrick somewhere.
I mean, you raise a really good point, right? And this happens everywhere, at the golf course, in the, you know, there's a lot of this kind of men-only sort of socialising, networking, etc. So, you know, I agree with you, we have to be vigilant about that, but we need to do what we can. The Garrick was a literal old boys club, you know, that said no women in the rule book for 193
you could come
years.
in, and now they're making it really difficult, which is what kind of hurts my head to understand the process.
Exactly that. So it's not just about changing the rule. There also has to be some thought given to the application process to actually live what they've now said they're going to do.
As you pointed out at the beginning, if they want to have a men's-only space, that's fine, but once you kind of cross the Rubicon and you say that you're going to open it to women, then surely you should open it to women and not just the three who have been allowed in: Judi Dench, Sian Phillips and Celia Emery. And, of course, the Garrick Club are more than welcome to come and have a conversation with us about it, about your opaque membership. We'd love to find out some of the processes.
Our DMs are open.
100%. Emily, appreciate it.
Thanks.
I don't need you anyway. You're much better at another club. Thank you very much for being with us. Right, let's take a look at the weather.
The ideal atmosphere, whatever the altitude. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
It looks as though high pressure is going to return to settle the weather, but for the second half of June. For now, it's unsettled with showers and longer spells of rain. These will turn thundery as warm air spreads up from the south later this week. It'll be a dry, bright start to the day, but cloud will increase from the west and will bubble up elsewhere, allowing showers to break out. Southern counties will stay mostly dry with some good sunny spells as well. More persistent rain is going to reach Northern Ireland and Scotland through the morning. Temperatures could be as high as 21 degrees Celsius in the south.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
Well, in about 5 or so minutes' time, we're expecting the Prime Minister to pop up and give a speech to launch London Tech Week. It's going to get some questions eventually about this AI thing, judging by what Sam's reporting has shown, what Chris Bryant had to say to us earlier. How's he going to pitch this, Murray, do you think?
So he's going to say that AI and that sector is valued at £72.3 billion and is estimated to potentially go north of £800 million by 2035. Billion, sorry, not million. And therefore, what he's going to say is it is imperative that we focus on this, that people from all backgrounds can work in this sector and get those high-skilled, high-paid jobs.
OK, Murray, thanks for that. We'll give the Prime Minister, Leah, too. Stay with us, plenty more to come after this short break.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Hello and good morning. It is 9 a.m. You're watching Sky News Breakfast. And in a few minutes, we're expected to hear from the Prime Minister, who's going to deliver a speech at London Tech Week. I'm pleased to say our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, and our political correspondent, Mari Aurora, are here with us. Powerhouse couple, thanks for being here. Look, it's a big week that's kicking off here for the government, isn't it? We're going to get the spending review on Wednesday, and we're going to get the PM kicking off this Tech Week, which is a big, important part for the government as well, Mari.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Prime Minister is really trying to kind of sell this AI revolution to the public, show that it's going to benefit them and benefit their children, the young, right? So they're talking about getting young people in secondary schools to learn tech and AI skills. They're talking about, boosting people's skills who are already in the workforce as well, to be able to kind of embellish, as it were, or enhance their CVs when it comes to this kind of stuff. And therefore putting money into making sure that there are the skills there to essentially plug those gaps. What the government press release is all talking about is basically saying that kind of tech bosses are saying that they want the staff, they want the expertise to be able to actually hire and recruit. Some of that will obviously potentially come from overseas, but what Starmer wants that to be is all to be plugged by, homegrown talent as well. And what he says is that people from backgrounds like his, working class backgrounds, are not always offered the opportunities that he believes they deserve. So he wants this to be available to those kinds of young people and those kinds of kids as well.
Yeah, but the big question, Sam, is whether we can trust AI. And you've spent a long weekend here bringing your kids because there was a childcare fail. But you've been digging down into AI and wrangling Chat GPT.
That's right. When you boil down what the Prime Minister's trying to do, he's trying to effectively to replace some things done by humans with robots, right? And that'll save them money. So subcontract entire tasks. But if humans take their eye off things like ChatGPT, there are problems, and that's what we've been looking into, really stumbling across this last week when it started fabricating episodes of the podcast that I do, transcripts of Politics at Sam and Anne's, quite convincingly, some good jokes, some good points, but there were just areas where it was plain wrong. But just the fact of the fabrication, and then when I challenged it, it doubled down and doubled down and doubled down. I lied. People argue about that term lie. You shouldn't anthropomorphise tech, but ultimately the tech itself presents as human, and therefore I think it's a perfectly legitimate word. But it looks as if this problem is getting worse, and OpenAI, which owns ChatGPT, actually says the newest models, the newest versions released in the last few months have higher levels of what's called hallucinations, i.e. complete, fact freakouts, as it were. So if that's getting worse, when you listen to some politicians, you think it's an endless sail towards it all getting better. But the facts don't support that. And when I challenged ChatGPT on it, first of all, it lied and said things were getting better, and then ultimately confessed that the stats show it's getting worse.
Yeah, we've only got about 30 seconds or so till the Prime Minister begins, Sam. But it is interesting, isn't it, that they need to position themselves, as Mari says, to try and reap the benefits of it. But many people, I'm sure everyone around this table, has great concerns about some of the way that AI works, because it does not... It's dishonest in some ways in the way it behaves.
When humans completely hand over tasks to AI, that's when the danger is. When humans use AI and keep an eye on it, then it has transformative benefits. Sounds a bit more like the government and the Prime Minister wants to do more of the first.
Right. OK, just pass it off. I mean, I put that to Chris Bryant. He said that there's hospitals where you have 30 people just moving pieces of paper around. You could give that to AI. I said, what about people's jobs that are going to...
But there are also hospitals that use AI to summarise patient notes written by doctors. Now, if that starts introducing errors, we've got big problems.
Yeah, and maybe we'll hear this later in Keir Starmer's speech, but I don't feel like I've heard much about a care of duty, particularly when we're talking about bringing AI into the classroom, for example. There's so many parents that say, we don't want kids on smartphones. There's a whole movement, smartphone-free childhood. But where's the care of duty? Do you think we'll hear that, Sam? Or think that will be something that we might hear?
The cynic of me thinks that quite a lot of this talk is quite cheap from government. Right. It's, there's all sorts of politics about people from this background and that. Is there deep strategy and deep thought going into how people can harness but not fall into the traps of AI? Well, let's listen to the speech and find out. Is this government just rushing into something because it sees cost savings and it needs to look like it's delivering them? Possibly. That's the danger of moments like this. Prime Ministers love these... I mean, just when we cut back to the room with the speech, look at how fancy it is. Yes, look at how glitzy and tech it looks. Who wouldn't love to stand up in a place like that and be in that aura, lauded by, tech giants? And I mean, this is... there's a little bit of me that thinks that if you're either evangelising or being a Luddite towards it. Those are the two things that you need to do. And I'm interested where the tone of the Prime Minister comes down. They know in Downing Street the problems. They know, some of them, two of them in Downing Street, watch the videos that we're talking about. That this isn't unaware. But the benefits they might think of today politically selling this hard might outweigh a more nuanced approach and a more nuanced strategy. Is it really in the interest of government to talk up the problems of something that it itself is going to rush into relying on for cost-saving reasons? That's the tightrope.
Yeah, and it's worth finding Sam's report online. We're going to play out as well, Sam. I mean, look, Murray, I put to Chris Bryant as well about the regulation of AI. The EU have a law already. I said, is it going to be like that? He said, oh, we're going to come up, find our own way. And he was very, very conscious of like these two forces that were pulling it apart, this over-regulation versus making sure that you don't upset the tech companies.
Exactly. And I think the difficulty is that Chris Bryant was saying to you, oh, you know, that's coming, vague promises, no real concrete answers on that. And that's because, oh, here he is.
Thank you so much. And it's really fantastic to stand here and to look out and see so many people in this room and to get a real sense of the energy, the commitment, the professionalism, the entrepreneur spirit that we have in this room. So let me start by thanking you all for being here. We're going to have a really good tech week. We've already kicked off yesterday. We've got some major announcements to make, some real partnership to do together. And I'm just so pleased to have this opportunity, this privilege of opening this morning. A real pleasure for me. And my constituency, the area I represent, is London. I'm a London MP. And that means that I understand firsthand just how important it is for our sector as we go forward. And, you know, whether it's entrepreneurs, whether it's the spirit in London, as we go forward, this is hugely, hugely important. We have to recognise that for many people, they see AI and tech as transformative, going to do so much, and every time you say over 5 years or 10 years, everybody says to me, shorten that, Keir. It's going to be more like 5 years and 3 years that we're going to bring about great change in so many aspects of our life, whether that's in health, where I've seen for myself the incredible contribution that tech and AI can make, standing in a hospital up in the Midlands, talking to consultants who deal with strokes, and they showed me the equipment, the techniques that they are using AI to isolate for stroke victims exactly where the clot is in the brain in a microsecond of the time it would have taken otherwise, brilliantly saving people's lives in that particular occasion. And shortly after that, I had an incident where I was being shown AI and stethoscopes working together to predict any problems someone might have. So whether it's health or other sectors, it's hugely transformative what can be done here. Last Monday, in fact, I was standing in Scotland launching the Strategic Defence Review of the government. This was a review that I commissioned soon after we came into power to tell me what are the risks that we face as a country in this new era? What are the challenges? What are our capabilities? And how do we make sure that as we go forward, our capabilities match the risks and the challenges that we face as a country? And in that, tech and AI were absolutely central. Because, as you will perhaps have seen over the last 3 years or more, during this awful conflict in Ukraine, I've been back to Ukraine on a number of occasions in that 3-year period to have in-depth conversations with President Zelensky to make sure that our support is in the right place. But I was really struck the trip before last that I did, this was probably about 6 or 7 weeks ago, the extent to which technology and AI was now having a direct impact in that conflict was huge. In 3 years of conflict, the way in which that war was being fought had changed profoundly. And therefore, what I wanted hardwired into our defence review was a real sense of how AI and tech would be driving our defence of the future. There are so many examples across government. I've set the challenge to all of my teams to show me how they can use AI not just in the output of government, not just in the partnership with yourselves and others and the delivery of services, but also in the very way that we do government. How do we transform what we do? And there are so many examples of that. I spoke to a social worker in Downing Street at one of our receptions, and she explained to me with a smile on her face just how AI is slashing her paperwork and her caseload, and she showed and talked me through the way in which she's now doing her work. And what she said to me was that this was helping her transform the work that she did because she could concentrate on the human element of it. She could use AI and tech to help her with the parts that could be done more quickly using tech and AI, and that made her more human. And from that, I've always said, AI and tech makes us more human. Which sounds an odd thing to say, but it's true. And we need to say it because, look, some people out there are skeptical. They do worry about AI taking their job. And I know for an audience like this is a debate that's been had perhaps many times, and we need to push past it. But for people listening to us, they worry about, will it make their lives more complicated? And even for businesses who get it, the pace of change can feel relentless. And I know you all get that and understand that, but when it comes to harnessing the power of this technology, I believe that the way we work through this together is critical. And that means a partnership. And partnership is at the heart of everything that we do in government. Working with you, you are the entrepreneurs who will drive this country forward. Our job as partners is to create the best possible conditions for you to succeed. And that's why events like this, conversations that we have in the margins, are so important, because we can only create the right conditions for you if we're having that conversation about what we're doing. You're able to put your fingerprints on what you're doing. Because, you know, just look at the raw facts. This industry, this sector, supports over 2 million jobs. That's incredible. Or take this statistic. In 2023, our AI sector grew 30 times faster than the rest of the economy. 30 times faster. That is incredible, particularly when we're driving for economic growth. So this is about what we can achieve. It's about, to me, who we are as a nation. What signal do we want to send to the rest of the world? And the signal I want to send is this: a Britain that once again, after years of chaos, is a stable partner for investors, that believes the future should be shaped by our democratic values, and that in this volatile world is unequivocally, unashamedly, defiantly even, open for business. And I think and hope you can see that in our approach to trade, in the new deals that we've done just in the last few months, determined as we are to create new markets, whether that's in India, in the US, or Europe, all areas where we've made progress recently. You can see it, I hope, in our openness to investment as well. And on that front, I am really pleased to welcome what I see as yet another vote of confidence in Britain today, with the announcement that Liquidity will base their European headquarters right here in London. And that's a 1.5... Thank you. That is a £1.5 billion investment into our economy, which means better access to finance for entrepreneurs right across the country. It's a vote of confidence in our AI Opportunities Action Plan as well. And we put that plan out at the beginning of the year. We're really proud of it. 50 recommendations, all of them accepted by the government. And at the heart of it is partnership in action. And it shows our ambition that we are determined to be the best state partner for tech entrepreneurs anywhere in the world. That's the bar, that's the ambition that I've set for my government. And so on that front, I can announce today also that we're committing an extra £1 billion worth of funding to scale up our compute power by a factor of 20. Now, you know how important that is. That's a huge increase. A huge increase in the size and power of Britain's AI engine, which means, of course, in this global race, we can be an AI maker and not an AI taker. And more importantly, that we have the digital infrastructure that we need to make sure AI improves our public services, because we do have a defining mission on that in the plan. A responsibility, if you like, to harness this unprecedented opportunity and to use it to improve the lives of working people. And this is a shared mission. We're a mission-driven government, but this is a shared mission. Because that social fear that I was talking about a little moment ago, trust me, I think that is the challenge for adoption. I think it's a far greater challenge than the regulatory barrier, although, as you know, that can be quite a challenge. But it is an area where the government can help, where we can do our bit in this partnership. So if we take planning, for example, which is a huge priority for this government, we are going to build more homes, more labs, more data centres. And we're going to do it much, much more quickly. So our planning and infrastructure bill going through Parliament at the moment is a real game changer. And each of you in this room will know just how important it is to change our rules on planning and infrastructure and the regulatory environment. And where that can then drive growth in building of homes, what a difference that will make. Again, the human that sits there with the tech and the AI, because the security of having an affordable home is hugely important. I come from a working class background, and at times we struggled as a family to make ends meet, but we owned our own home. And that gave me a sense of security, a base camp, if you like, on which I could build my life, my opportunities, and my aspiration. And I want that to be there for everyone in the country, that base camp. And AI can help on this. And this is how we explain and lead people down this transformative path of AI. And in that way, and pushing forward, we have developed a powerful new tool. And we've done this in-house. I'm really proud of this, that as a government, we've taken on the challenge and developed in-house just to prove that governments can innovate. We use that word all the time, and some people don't associate it with government. We've developed what we call Extract. And this is being trialled in councils in Exeter, Westminster, Nuneaton, and Bedworth. And what it does is it takes old handwritten planning documents and puts them into digital form in seconds. So jobs that would otherwise have taken hours and hours done in seconds. 100 planning records a day. And the usual, by the way, the average up till now is 5. So you can see it's a huge productivity boost. And so we want to roll that out across the country. And that doesn't just show that government can innovate, it also means faster planning decisions, which I think will come as relief to many people in this room and beyond, both in AI and growth, frankly, in any business that is seeking to grow. And of course, it's money saved for councils, so they can spend their money on other things, and it turns into more growth and more investment. But most of all, it speeds up the future that we need. AI innovation making a difference for working people. And the same, of course, is true across the public realm. We're looking at how can AI speed up discharges from hospitals, hugely important. We have long waiting lists in our hospitals are busy, and one of the problems is how do we get people out the back door more quickly. AI can help with that. Same with the asylum backlog. How can AI and tech help us deal with that more quickly? Or teachers, helping them personalise the lessons for their pupils. Again, using their time to good endeavour, making them more human, giving that interaction so that every child gets the best possible chance in life. And what a difference a good teacher, personalising what they do, can make to so many children. So in every case, we can show AI innovation making a difference for working people. But if we're truly to succeed in this mission, then one of the biggest barriers is, of course, skills. And you will all have debated this many, many times. There isn't a conversation about AI and tech and growth and investment and business that doesn't in the end come back to this question of skills, a key concern in any business in technology, actually any business pretty well across the country. And also one of the great worries for working people. It's the same for any parent. Always your number one thought is, how will this affect my children? What does it mean for their future? So today, I am really delighted to announce what is a step change in how we train homegrown talent for the AI age. A partnership with 11 major companies to train 7.5 million workers in AI by 2030. And we also have a commitment from NVIDIA to partner on new AI talent pipeline. And Jensen is here with us. We'll be in conversation just now. We're so grateful for that partnership. And that allows us to expand their lab in Bristol. And that will make a huge difference to opportunity and jobs in the Southwest and beyond. And in the spirit of partnership, we're also going to bring the full powers of government to bear with the new Tech First training programme. That's up to 1 million young people trained in tech skills that will be so crucial for their future. That's a £185 million investment embedding AI right through our education system, starting in our secondary schools with subjects like computer science. At universities, a new scholarship programme for high-flying students, supporting the best and brightest postgrads so they can focus their research on the next frontier. So from school all the way through. And on top of that, extra support for small businesses and entrepreneurs, hugely important, so they can recruit the technology skills that they need. And this, trust me, is a package, I think, that will make a massive difference to the aspirations of working people. And at the end of the day, that is what this must be about. I want young people in the poorer parts of my constituency. And I'm thinking in particular of a place called Somerstown. This is between Euston and King's Cross. King's Cross, where there's so much of that tech, entrepreneur, AI brilliance. There are children in Somerstown, just literally a stone's throw away, who look out of their classroom windows and don't necessarily see that they can make the journey that that stone would take if they threw it at King's Cross. And I want them to look out at the technology sector and feel, yes, I can be part of that success. This could belong to me. And so this work we're doing with schools, with universities, with colleges is so important to make them feel they've got a role, they've got an aspiration, they've got a future. And you can't aspire to do something unless you can see it and feel it and understand what it is. And in this country, the technology we build needs to be built in that way. And whilst I'm on Somerstown, I do just want to give a short example of that and praise the tech sector for investing in Somerstown, because I've thrown this challenge out to them many, many times to say, how do you make the children in the poorest part of my constituency aspire to work in your sector? And Google AI have opened a campus there in Somerstown, taken up that challenge. It is tremendous. I went there for the opening. It's right next to the secondary school where I envisaged in my mind's eye those students who wouldn't necessarily see their future in AI, and now that campus is right next to their school, so they can do those lessons, they can go there, they can see it every day. A really good example, and thank you to the tech sector for stepping up to that challenge. But now we need to go further. By the end of this Parliament, we should be able to look every parent in the eye, in every region in Britain, and say, look what technology can deliver for you. We can put money in your pocket. We can create wealth in your community. We can create good jobs, vastly improve our public services, and build a better future for your children. That, to me, is the opportunity we must seize. That's what my plan for change will deliver. And today, I think we're taking another big step towards it. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for letting me have the privilege of opening this morning. Let's have a really good Tech Week. Thank you.
There's the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, opening London Tech Week speech there, all about the possibility, the promise of artificial intelligence and the effects it will have on education, on the workforce. He's going to sit down now and speak with some leaders from some big tech firms, NVIDIA's there, Google's there as well, and the Prime Minister will have a roundtable discussion. We're going to step away, though, because we're going to get some analysis of what we heard from the Prime Minister. Mari and Sam are still with us. And guys, Sam, I mean, look, he was evangelising AI. I think that breaks one of the rules you were telling me about earlier. Nothing critical
Oh, I
there
think there was something better than that. There was something much better than that. The tech failed. So I don't know whether you noticed, but the Prime Minister had to busk at the beginning, and then some poor flunky ran on with the, get this, hard copy of the speech.
Yikes.
And then he sort of segued into that, so there was some wonderful riffing about not very much for quite some time before his aides, human beings, stepped in to sort him out. So, yes, there was content, but there was also drama and serendipity as well.
Well, one of the cameras failed as well. My director tells me that the camera looking at the audience was terrible, really low res, so they couldn't even use it. So the tech there failed as well.
I think what's really interesting, and this is a very, very cynical political point, but in that little ad-lib at the beginning when the tech failed, we had a bit more of Starmer, right? Because it wasn't the pre-rehearsed speech that he, just reading off the auto cue. He had to just kind of give it, something that he had just for a second. And the thing that he said that I find really fascinating is he said, I'm a London MP, I'm a London MP, I'm London-based, so I really get it. Now, I personally think that is going to really rub up non-London MPs in the wrong way. He said, so I understand how important this is because I'm a London MP.
As opposed to people in the regions.
And I think your backbenchers who are not in London are going to say to themselves, hold on a second, I thought this AI revolution was all about everybody in the UK.
Yeah, social
mobility. What's London got to do with it, right?
Propagating a myth that, people outside London have straw in their mouth.
Exactly.
That's really
to me,
not good.
I mean,
not good.
that might just be my brummy antenna tingling here, but
you picked up on your
I
spidey
think that was a bit of a problem. But this is what happens when the tech fails, and you've got to be a human being. You can make mistakes. You can say things that perhaps your advisors might not want you to.
Human makes mistakes.
There you go.
It's so interesting, isn't it? The money on the table here, Sam. I mean, does it all add up?
I mean, we've no idea. I mean, the problem with some of this is that the Prime Minister is talking about using AI effectively to cut costs, effectively to get rid of bodies that currently work in the public sector to reduce the bill. And then at the same time is having to, with the same kind of innocent face, talk about how he's upskilling people. I mean, come off it. This is about reducing the number of people in the public sector, not increasing it. Now, he will say it's about training people to work better and the public workforce is probably a bit too big. Fair enough. But you are having it both ways. And you are having it both ways without really knowing what areas AI can absolutely dependably take over from human beings and be trusted. And you ask if the figures add up. We just don't know. We don't know what underpins the savings figures. We don't know how much the savings promise. And I tell you what, if the figure ends in a 5 or a 0, it doesn't add up because no figure ends in a 5 or a 0, apart from government finances. So, there's quite a lot of performative baloney here. I mean, there is in quite a lot of political speeches. I suppose you have to boil it down to the sort of the big picture argument, but then we come back to the test from before. Is he either a Luddite or evangelising? Well, he's not a Luddite about it because he's from London. He is evangelising. And, so long as politicians don't give us a sort of untrammelled, case on one side, do you really trust them when the going gets more difficult to understand and appreciate and be nuanced about the complications, or are they just going to tell us that, white is black? I mean, I'm sorry, it was a bit more like the latter.
Absolutely. All right, guys, much better than listening to Keir Starmer sitting some tech bosses get some actual analysis of it. It's Sam, Mari, Leah, thanks so much for that. Still plenty to come on The Breakfast Show this morning. Well, the stalemate between India and Pakistan a month on from recent attacks in Kashmir.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Hello there and welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up, we're going to have the latest from Los Angeles.
Yeah, we are. And that top story from Los Angeles is all centred around there being more clashes between police and protesters. This happened all overnight. Tear gas and rubber bullets were used on those demonstrating against immigration raids. And protests have really intensified after President Trump sent in the National Guard. The Israeli Foreign Ministry has confirmed that the aid ship, the Madeleine, is making its way to the shores of Israel. The vessel had been carrying a dozen activists, including Greta Thunberg, who were seeking to break the naval blockade of Gaza. And more than 1,000 doctors have written to MPs urging them to vote against the assisted dying bill, calling it a real threat to both patients and the medical workforce. The Chancellor is set to unveil the government's spending review. This is happening on Wednesday, and unlike the autumn budget when Rachel Reeves plans on where to tax and to borrow to fund overall spending levels, the spending review will set out exactly how that money is divided up between different government departments. And the Prime Minister says artificial intelligence will transform the way the government operates. He was just speaking at the London Tech Week in the last few minutes or so, and Sir Keir Starmer said the UK would invest £185 million in teaching young people AI skills.
Very interesting in light of what we heard from Sam Mari about AI. We'll get more on that, of course, throughout the days that London Tech Week gets underway. Well, more on our top story now. There's been a third night of chaos in LA as protests there continue against immigration raids. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner has the latest.
It's certainly a lot quieter here than it was just a few hours ago. Most of the protesters seem to have heeded police warnings to leave this area or face arrest. But the streets in this part of downtown LA bear the hallmarks of a day of messy and at times violent protests. There are cars burnt out, there are streets strewn with debris, water bottles, cans, rubber bullets that law enforcement fired on protesters. Many of the buildings here too, especially the federal buildings, have been graffitied with anti-Donald Trump, anti-immigration, anti-law enforcement graffiti. But things definitely calmer than they were this afternoon and into the early evening. And in fact, just over here, you'll see that the 101 freeway, which was the highway that you saw in my piece, the busiest road in this part of LA, it was shut for much of the day as police had a standoff with protesters. Well, now one side of the road is back open again. That's back moving. Police just looking to reopen the other side of the road too. Just a word on as well on Donald Trump's immigration policy. His immigration policies in the polls have received net positive approval ratings. Those polls taken before these at times violent protests in LA. So it's not clear how that will change the public impression of Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. But you have to imagine that he'll be relishing the idea of a head-to-head with a blue state over one of the key pillars of his presidency, and that is the crackdown on illegal immigration.
That was Martha Kellner reporting there from Los Angeles. Now, Pakistan has claimed that the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, was misleading when he accused Islamabad of involvement in recent attacks in Kashmir. The diplomatic stalemate between the two nations is ongoing, a month on from that incident. Well, let's speak now to Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, chairman of the Pakistan People's Party and a former foreign minister. Bilawal, thanks so much for making the time to speak with us. I really appreciate you coming into studio as well. How are relations between Islamabad and New Delhi at the moment?
Well, the furthest that they've ever been. We just fought a 5-day war conflict. Throughout this escalation, Pakistan is restrained and responsible. And even today, Pakistan's message is we want peace through dialogue and diplomacy. We believe there's no military solution to any of the issues between India and Pakistan. And unfortunately, as our neighbor has refused to talk, this delegation is going from capital to capital, engaging with the international community, seeking their assistance in this pursuit for peace.
Give us a specific. The Indus Water Treaty is still suspended. The rhetoric around that from Pakistan's side was that if it's not reinstated, that's an act of war. Is that where you still are?
So absolutely. One of the many issues, and I'm happy to go to any of them, is the weaponization of water. Through the declaration by India, the threat by India that they'll shut off the water supply to 240 million people in Pakistan. Just making that threat is a violation of the UN Charter. Were they to act on that threat, Pakistan has been very clear, we'd consider that an act of war. I believe that all countries, I'd even sort of appeal to your viewers, everyone should speak with one voice condemning India's decision. We can't allow this precedent to set. We can't weaponize water. We've been to war with India before. We've had many exchanges such as this, but never has such a drastic step been taken. At the moment, the threshold for conflict between India and Pakistan is the lowest than it's ever been in our history. We've achieved the ceasefire, but we have not achieved peace. As it stands today, if there's a terrorist attack anywhere in India or Indian-occupied Kashmir, proof or no proof, that means war. That's not a tenable situation. Pakistan believes there needs to be dialogue and diplomacy where we discuss all issues, terrorism, Kashmir, water, and start moving forward.
But let's just be really specific about what's happened with the treaty. It's been suspended, but the water has not yet been stopped. Just be...
So illegal. So first of all, there's no legal term to suspend or hold in abeyance. That's the word they use, the treaty. According to the treaty itself, which is not just between India and Pakistan, but has international institutions as a party to it, no changes can be made to the treaty without mutual consent. There is no such thing as hold in abeyance or suspend. That is a violation of the treaty.
The water hasn't stopped flowing.
So they don't have the capacity at the moment to completely stop flowing the water. However, they are able to delay the release of water, which even if in sort of a country like Pakistan, which is an agrarian economy, even a week's delay in the water can kill your crop. They're not sharing the data as a lower riparian, that's our right, about the status of the water, etc. And there's a whole host of things that they're doing that is still sort of, unacceptable. Were they to build new canals or try and build a new dam on the three rivers that are in Pakistan's domain, then for us, we'd have to take a more aggressive step.
And that would be war. As you rightly point out, wars have been fought in the past between India and Pakistan. The treaty has never been suspended at this, as it has been now, the first time since 1960, so it's a real inflection point. Look, you said you were on a delegation to speak to people in capitals. You were in the United States just the other day. On Thursday, challenged by a congressman called Brad Sherman to reduce any connections and to stamp down on terrorism in Pakistan, particularly the group Jaish al-Mohammed.
I really appreciate Mr. Sherman's role within the House of the United States. His tweets don't necessarily reflect the conversation we actually had when we were there.
But he did ask you to stamp down on terror groups.
Having said that, the points he did make are legitimate. Pakistan has and does combat terror within its own country, particularly the groups that are mentioned in his tweet, but perhaps he missed talking when I was sort of physically there. Those groups, Pakistan has taken effective action against under the FATF framework. When I was foreign minister, Pakistan was on the FATF grey list, and we managed to move it towards the FATF white list by the end of my term. That means that the FATF is an organization, the international community endorses Pakistan's actions against such groups.
But can more be done, though? Can more be done? I mean, look,
I feel that as far as India,
is,
first of all, the terrorist attack that took place in India had nothing to do. So the two different things. Terror groups within Pakistan. Pakistan's taking action against to the sort of within our capability. The terrorist.
I want to say fullest, then, did you?
The fullest, obviously. Okay. Why would I not want to say fullest? That's what I want to say. What I was trying to say is the terrorist attack that did take place in India had nothing to do with Pakistan. That was an indigenous group within India, and therefore I can't take action against those groups. The fact that India wants to blame Pakistan for actions of those groups within its own territory is sort of counterproductive.
How was peace brokered this time? President Trump's wants to take credit for it. Is that true?
I think President Trump deserves credit for the ceasefire that we've managed to achieve. Absolutely. The United States, President Trump, Secretary Rubio were engaged with both Pakistan and India in order to achieve this ceasefire. I can't explain why India won't admit the truth, but throughout this episode, what we've seen is India is engaged in misinformation, disinformation. They've not been honest with their own public. They've not been honest with the media. They've not been honest with their allies. And this is one additional thing that they're not honest about.
Of course, the Indian government are here to defend themselves, but when you say not admit the truth, what truths do you think they need to admit to?
Admit the truth. That Pakistan had nothing to do with this terrorist attack. They went to war on the basis of a lie, and then they couldn't win that war. They lied about the planes that we shot down. They lied about the details of this terrorist attack. To this day, they cannot name a single terrorist that was involved in this attack. They went to war with a nuclear armed power. They can't tell you, they can't tell me, they can't tell the people of India which terrorist was involved in this attack, what's his name, where did he come from, if you claim he came from Pakistan, which town, which border crossing. I mean, these are basics that I believe by this point, if India was being honest, that information would have come forward.
Questions we need to put to India itself.
Absolutely.
You're in the UK for meetings. We talked about your meetings in the US. What would you want to hear from the UK government?
I think the UK has a unique role in this entire situation. First of all, obviously, the United Kingdom played a part in partition. The unresolved issue of Kashmir. There's a British legacy there, which I believe they bring a certain context to, a certain perspective to. There's a large population of people from India, people from or of Indian descent, of Pakistani descent, that live here in the UK. I don't think we can isolate ourselves from...
Could they broker peace talks between the two sides?
Broker or not broker, I think it's important, when it comes to the issue of water, that no matter where you stand or what your positions are, how close you are with India, that's something that we all have to draw as a red line on the basis of sort of a humanitarian perspective. They should absolutely encourage India to engage in dialogue with Pakistan. Look, India said no to an impartial investigation when we asked for one into the terrorist attack. They say no to mediation, be it from the UK or the US, and they say no to dialogue with Pakistan. So then if they're stuck in the status quo, we've lowered the conflict threshold between India and Pakistan to the point where any terrorist attack means war. There's no dispute resolution mechanism between two nuclear armed powers. That's not a tenable situation. It means that South Asia is insecure, and by extension the region and the globe. So everybody's affected by this.
So look, you've seen the Prime Minister's at London Tech Week. You're going to hear, I guess, from David Lammy as well, and speak to people within the Foreign Office. What do you need to hear specifically from those individuals? What words do they need to use that will reassure you can go back to Islamabad?
We've had really positive... When I was still in Pakistan, immediately after this conflict, that the ceasefire had just been broken out, David Lammy visited Pakistan. He engaged with us. He appreciated that the ceasefire is fragile, but I believe the United Kingdom government is keen to encourage both sides to engage in a dialogue so that we can deal with all issues. It's only the Indians that are being difficult about this.
Okay, well, as I said, we need to get a response from...
Please ask them all the questions you want.
You're going off to Europe as well to have these same conversations.
Absolutely.
So we will speak with you again. Now I want to speak to you about domestic issue, if I can, Bilawal.
Sure.
It's been reported online that Imran Khan, the political opponent who's been sentenced to 14 years in prison, could be bailed on the 11th of June. What truth is there in that reporting?
I don't know, but if it's, there's a legal process in Pakistan, and if the courts and everything feel that he deserves to be let out on bail, like, we'd support that. It's absolutely his right.
There'd be no challenge to the court's proceeding from your
well, there
party?
may be. Not from me personally or from my party. I'm actually not aware about the specifics. It's the first time hearing from this is from you. But if it's true, then that's part of the legal process.
Has been said. Okay.
That's
and
part of the
11th of June, so a couple of days' time. Yeah, all right, Bilawal, look, it's good to speak with you today. All the best on the rest of your trip around Europe, and see you again. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so to come on The Breakfast Show this morning. Women will compete at Queen's Club for the first time in 50 years.
secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war.
This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Welcome back. As you can see, the whole gang's here. Mari's here. Jack is here. Excellent. Also, because... I love it. I mean, bring it on. The Queen's Club. Big changes ahead today, Jackie.
Yeah, the reason I'm sitting here is because I thought it was great, lots of people think it's great, that Queen's Club, which has always been a men's tournament in the build-up to Wimbledon, a real prestigious thing to win ahead of Wimbledon. You know, doesn't mean if you win it, you're going to win Wimbledon. Andy Murray's won it 5 times, a record. There was no tournament for women at Queen's. They were always at Eastbourne. But starting today, there is one. So this week will be all about the ladies. What's different? The trophies are the same size. Okay. The new trophy is lovely. It's been specially designed. They've not had this tournament at Queen's for women since 1973. So, you know, Billie Jean King was playing in the doubles the last time they had this tournament at Queen's. Now, what is different between the men's and the women's? You could probably guess. It's the prize. It's the prize money. The men for this tournament will earn 2.1 million in their prize pot. The women 1.1 million, and actually that's even been topped up by the LTA, so it was even less. It is not the LTA's fault. It is not Queen's fault. It's just how the prize money is distributed across the board for women's tennis. There is a perception it's now equal pay. It isn't. What's equal are the Grand Slams. So Wimbledon and the French Open, for example, they will have equal prize money. But that's it. Across the rest of the tour, the rest of their bread and butter, when they're earning their money, it's much less than the men. The women that I spoke to seemed OK with this, or they're just resigned to it, or something like that. But I'm sort of disgruntled on their behalf.
I can feel it.
Laura Robson is the tournament director, and she said they're doing everything they can. By 2029, the pay will be equal. But they've got to build up to it. This is a new tournament. They're going to start from where they are now, which is already the best pay on the tour for this tournament. And they're going to just build the best tournament this week that they can at the first time of asking. Let's have a look.
The prize money across the tours is decided by the WTA and the ATP. So people see equal prize money at the Grand Slams and think that that happens year-round, which is not the case. And so in terms of closing that gap, the LTA have announced that it will be equal prize money by 2029, which is ahead of the standards that the WTA themselves have set. So we're going to hit that marker sooner rather than later. But in order to do so, we need to run a successful event in the first place. And we're going to put out the best player field and schedule that we can on a day-to-day. So I think for this week we're doing all that we can, and then it's up to the other tournaments to put the women on the same pedestal as the guys are.
As they should be. And Jackie, it's just extraordinary to me because I always thought that Queen's was just a men's tournament and Eastbourne was the women's tournament. And you're saying they split off in the 70s, right?
Yeah, Eastbourne is mixed. And there was an event here in the 70s. We saw Emma Raducanu there. She's playing in this tournament. You've got a lot of Grand Slam winners playing in this tournament. So there is a demand there to be playing at Queen's. But when they get to a level where women's tennis and men's tennis is considered equal, I think that will be a good day for women's sport, because it clearly isn't. At the French Open, that just finished. There was no women's matches scheduled in the prime time slot.
What was their answer to that? Why they went on Philippe Chatier?
They didn't really give an excuse, but I think it's financial, it's commercial. The potential for men to play 5 sets in a Grand Slam would make that match last a really long time, so you get more bang for your buck if you're a buyer of that ticket for the evening session. I think that's the thinking.
You could surely schedule it. It's got a roof, there are lights there. I mean, that's the whole point. You go into
Yeah, but
the evening.
sometimes the women's matches can be over very quickly. You just never know which way they're going to go, but less and less so, I would say. And speaking of Paris, what an amazing match yesterday.
Well, it recorded, I'm going to watch it later.
It was 5 hours.
I know, it's going to be a hell of an afternoon.
5.5 hours. It was Alcaraz against Sinner, 1 against 2 in the world. Alcaraz defending champion. He was down and out in this match. I actually don't know how he won it, and I don't think he knew either at the end. He was 2-1 down, 5-3 down, and facing 3 championship points. And he somehow managed to believe he was still in it, and he was. And they played tennis from the gods. It was out of this world. They got better and better. They must have been exhausted. Sinner was cramping. Sinner had one hand on that trophy, and he must have walked off that court last night and thought, how did I not win that? But this guy is just something else. And you've now got that rivalry, which is quite young, and they're quite young, to match, you know, Federer and Nadal. Well, we'll see if it will. But the potential is there for many years to come to have this fantastic rivalry, which is exciting.
Another one adding into there, Jack Draper as well, who some people like as being...
realistically speaking, Jack Draper is now 4 in the world, and he could be. But these two are in a league of their own. They are better than everybody else at the moment.
Yeah.
Things can change, but that was an extraordinary match. They are calling it the greatest French Open final of all time, which, when you consider that Rafa won it 14 times, is quite something, isn't it?
5 hours is a long time to watch tennis. You're right, it's going to be a long afternoon. My son's going to have to find other things. I think he likes watching tennis.
It's a nice thing to watch today.
He likes the bright colours.
I think you'll fall asleep about 45 minutes.
I'll doze off. I love it.
And you'll wake up
like watching
just at
Test
the
match
end.
special or something.
You won't. You'll be screaming at the TV, honestly, I promise you.
OK, all right, I look forward to it. I'll let you know how I get on, guys. Thanks so much for that.
Looking forward to it. Should we take a look at the weather?
Let's do it.
The perfect climate, wherever the destination. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
That looks as though high pressure will return to settle the weather for the final half of June. For now, it remains unsettled with showers or longer spells of rain. These will turn thundery as warmer air spreads up from the south later this week. It will be a dry, bright start to the day, but cloud will increase from the west and bubble up elsewhere, allowing showers to break out. Southern counties will stay mostly dry with some good sunny spells. More persistent rain will reach Northern Ireland and Scotland through the morning. Temperatures will range from 13 degrees in the north to 21 in the south.
The perfect climate, whatever the forecast. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for having me for one day only with the gang. I enjoyed that.
You're not here all week.
I'm not here all week. There are other things to do, and I'll be back later in the summer. So I really enjoyed it.
I've got a 5.5 hour tennis match. Exactly.
Have a little nap. All right, well, thanks everyone for being with us. We're going to have Gareth Barlow coming up with Sky News Today next. And of course, we'll get more from that summit that the Prime Minister has opened, as well as get the very latest from Los Angeles.
Yeah, Martha Kellner will be updating us, but do check on the Sky News website and app for any updates there too. It's always there. But thanks for your company, guys. Really enjoyed it.
So from the breakfast team, we'll see you again soon. Well, I won't, but there you go.